Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dave Sullivan. We're going to get ready to start our Flagler County Board of County Commissioners meeting for May 18th, 2020, 5 p.m. I'll first read the announcement concerning how we're doing this. Pursuant to Florida Governor's Executive Order 2069, the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners will conduct its regular meeting using communications media technology. No members of the public will be permitted to enter the Government Services Building or the board chambers. No person will be in the board chambers during this meeting. There will be no live comments from the public today. There is no meeting room. Everyone from the commission and county staff are participating remotely for reasons of public health and safety. As posted with our meeting notice, members of the public can email or phone in their comments prior to or during the meeting, and a staff member will read them into the record. There are 4 options to see this meeting. Spectrum channel 492, YouTube, www.flaglercounty.org. Click on YouTube icon to go to. We have our Zoom that we've already got set up here, and then you can call. Let me give you these numbers twice. Anybody from the public who's listening in, 301-715-3592 or 312-626-6799 and enter webinar ID, I'll say it slowly, 820-6500-8907 before or during the meeting. Follow the prompts given by the Zoom system. All right, with that, if everybody will either stand or stay seated, we'll do the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And for our start of our moment of silence, we ask God to bless all the citizens of Flagler County, especially the men and women of the military around the world, standing watch to maintain our freedom. Here at home, our brave first responders, police, fire, and medical personnel keep us safe, away from danger, and secure in our homes. Never been more true during this COVID-19 pandemic. So we'll just be quiet. All right, thank you for that, and we'll go on with the meeting. There are going to be some additions, deletions, modifications to the agenda. That's where we are right now on the agenda. We have 3 items that we're going to, which I'm going to ask the commissioners to agree to add to the agenda. The 3 items are construction of the new Sheriff's Operations Center discussion. There'll be a discussion on that. That'll become item 8B. So if I could get a motion to approve adding that item to the agenda, item 8B, construction of the new Sheriff's Operations Center.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we add discussion on construction of the Sheriff's Ops Center as item 8B to the agenda.
I have a second.
Second it. I'll second that, David.
All right, that's Mr. Erickson seconding it. Any further discussion? Well, we will be discussing this, so we will be adding this item unless there's some anyone from the public commenting on that. Lucy, and I would think there wouldn't be, but if there is, let me know.
No public comment, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, just a question. We didn't get any additional documentation on this. This is something we're just going to discuss, correct?
Right.
Make sure I didn't miss anything.
Right. No. Now,
okay.
The second item, which will hopefully become 8C, is an open letter from leaders of Flagler County and municipalities discussion. There was a letter that I received. Hopefully each one of you got a copy of it today. It should be in your email. It's a fairly long letter, and we'll go into the details on it. I don't want to do that now, but it's just to give you an idea. Have any of you seen this letter? Okay.
I don't recall it, Charlie.
I have not seen I have not seen it.
Yeah, we sent it. Lucy, I think we sent it out earlier today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. I sent it as an email and it was additional items to be added for tonight.
Okay. This letter is fairly significant. I don't, as I said, I don't want to go into the details now, but it is, it's signed by, just to give you an idea, we'll talk about it later. I don't want to do it right now, by all the mayors in Flagler County, all the city and county managers, emergency managers, and Bob Snyder from the health department. So you guys have not seen this, I take it then. Okay. Is that true of all the members here, all the commissioners here?
I don't recall seeing it.
Okay. Well, I'd still like to discuss it, at least partially then.
Well, sure.
And we can go through it. It's a fairly important letter since it was signed by all those individuals. I'm not sure. So that would become 8C, open letter from leaders of Flagler County and its municipalities. Discussion, easy to say. Would anybody like to second or make a motion that we discuss that letter? I'm very disappointed now that you haven't seen it. Has anybody checked their email right now to see if it's there?
Yeah, I just found it. It was below when I read the 3 items that were being added, and I didn't go any farther down the list. So it was hidden in the bottom there.
Okay. Okay. Well, does anybody want to make that an item or not?
Well, I think we can move through it, can't we? I mean, we'll have somebody
It'll be at the end. It'll be towards the end of the meeting, and
read one at a time, and we'll handle them then.
maybe during the meeting.
I can read it between now and when it's time to have it. So Mr. Chairman, I move that we add item 8C, which is discussing the open letter on leadership from mayors of Flagler County.
Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Charlie seconds it. I don't know how we can have much further discussion on it, but I'm opening it up for further discussion now to any of the commissioners or the public. We will, as I say, we'll discuss it later, but I'll go ahead and I'll call for the vote now. Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Yes.
Commissioner Erickson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Mullins.
Yes.
All right, we'll make that item 8C. And then the final item to add, and I think everybody will be interested in this one, it'll become 8D. It's the short-term vacation rental consideration. And I believe that Amy Basic will be doing that briefing for us, and we'll do that at the end of the meeting. That's very important that we get through that today also. So I'll ask for a motion that we add that to the agenda as business item 8D.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we add item 8D, a discussion of the short-term vacation rentals.
I need a second.
Second.
Second by Charlie. Further discussion either publicly or by the commissioners on adding that. That's what we're doing, is adding the item. It'll be brief. It'll be right at the end of the meeting, end of the items for the meeting. Hearing none, all those in, Commissioner Hanson,
Yes.
Charlie Erickson,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Yes.
Commissioner Mullins.
Yes.
All right, so we've added items 8B, 8C, and 8D. Now to get on with the meeting. There will be no live comments from the public today. There's no meeting room. Everyone from the commission and the county staff are participating remotely for reasons of public health and safety. As posted with our meeting notice, members of the public can email or phone in their comments prior to or during the meeting, and the staff member will read them into the record. Non-essential county meetings continue to be canceled until further notice, and our next regular meeting will be Monday, June 1st at 9 a.m. With that, we'll get on to the agenda. Of the recognitions, proclamations, and presentations, no recognitions, no proclamations, but we'll go to 4C, presentations. And I would ask the Emergency Management Director, Jonathan Lord, to speak at this time, give us an update.
Thank you. Chairman and Commissioners, good evening. Your EOC continues to be activated in support of our community's response to the COVID-19 pandemic. While we concurrently can tweak at the same time, we're concurrently tweaking our planning assumptions for our upcoming hurricane season, for which I'll be providing you a more detailed update on at the June 1st Commission meeting. As of Friday, Flagler County has incurred approximately $1.25 million in COVID-19 response expenses, much of which will be reimbursed through FEMA's Public Assistance Program. And those items not eligible under the FEMA Public Assistance Program may well be eligible under other CARES Act programs. The Florida Association of Counties, in partnership with the Florida League of Cities, has sent a letter to the governor requesting over $1.2 billion in CARES Act funds already provided to Florida be earmarked to local governments. And I believe you all probably got an email through FAC or forwarded from Holly Albanese to you all. FAC sent a letter this morning up to the governor's office, reiterating that and providing a lot of detail of why the governor should earmark those funds and make sure they do pass on down to local governments. As of today, the Florida Department of Health is showing 160 positive cases of COVID-19 in our community, and it has been reported that over 2,600 people have been tested. Our percent of positive residents continues to slowly decline, which is a good sign. And that's a function of number of positives compared to number of people being tested. And we're hovering around 6% today. We continue with testing our residents and workers through the Daytona State College Palm Coast community site, which was open today and will operate tomorrow and Wednesday of this week. Then next week, after Memorial Day, into the foreseeable future, we will continue to operate on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. This is in addition to the ongoing testing being done through the individual's regular healthcare providers, the Florida Department of Health at their offices in Bunnell, and at various urgent care centers in or near our community. As you may have already heard, at the end of last week, Advent Health discovered an issue with one of their labs used to process the sputum-based testing throughout their Central Florida service area. Advent has advised they are working directly with those affected individuals to provide them with retesting options. Advent shared that some, probably not all, of the 1,017 people tested in Flagler County using that sputum-based processes are affected. They don't believe it's all 1,017. Those are the people that tested during that period. We used that process, but they don't have an exact number at this point in time, or at least they didn't earlier today when I spoke with them. The majority of our parks and recreational facilities are open to some extent, with the exception of ball fields and playgrounds. When it came to opening tennis and pickleball courts, we did so in line with guidance from their respective state and national associations, putting out information about how to play safely. We have conducted the same research as it relates to soccer, baseball and softball, lacrosse, and playgrounds. On the soccer side, the U.S. Club Soccer has deferred to state and local guidelines. The Florida Youth Soccer Association will not return to play until at least 14 days after Florida enters phase 3, just to give you some idea of where those two associations that govern soccer play are thinking. In regards to baseball and softball, USA Softball of Florida has no current plans or guidelines other than everything remains canceled through at least June 14th. The National Softball Association Fast Pitch remains canceled, and National Club Baseball Association they're saying to remain canceled. The National Lacrosse Association is talking about releasing guidance as early as maybe next week on safe play. And in regards to playgrounds, the CDC still continues to have guidance that says do not use playgrounds, as well as the National Recreation and Park Association continues to recommend that playgrounds and play structures be closed. At this point in time, it is prudent that we stay the course and not change anything relating to our ball fields or playgrounds until such time as they're applicable, national and state associations, as well as the CDC provides us with different guidance. And we are constantly monitoring those associations and the CDC that I mentioned earlier for any changes in that guidance. As soon as they release that kind of guidance, we will work directly with our Parks Department to make the applicable changes. And then last but not least, vacation rentals. As you are aware, on Friday afternoon, the governor shared it at a press conference in response to a reporter's question that he would allow vacation rentals to reopen on a county by county basis once he has approved a safety plan submitted by the county to the Florida Department of Business and Professional Regulation. This was a surprise to all counties, as it had not been previously shared that he was thinking this way. And Amy Lakasik and her team have worked diligently over the weekend and today on such a plan, and you all will be discussing that later in this meeting. So thank you all for your continued support of our emergency operations here as we continue to support our community, and I will remain on the line should you have any questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions from the board members or for Jonathan?
Just again, a big pat in the back for the job Jonathan's doing for us with getting us information and him personally keeping up to date, daily date with all the other agencies.
Anyone else of the commissioners?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I've been getting several emails about softball fields, so that was interesting that Jonathan passed on. So if I understand it correctly, we're waiting for the national and state softball and fast pitch softball associations to tell us when to open the softball fields. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, they won't officially quote unquote tell us, but they'll release what I have seen typically phrased as safe play guidelines. So they'll basically say, if your community allows you to, this is a way to safely resume playing those games.
But we're not going to open up until we get that kind of a message.
Correct. I think it would be a little overly aggressive of us to open up barring those kind of guidelines from those groups. And we're not experts in those games. Those associations are the experts. So
right.
I think we let the experts make the decision, and then we'll reiterate that decision once we have the information.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jonathan.
Any other commissioners? All right. Lucy, were there any questions concerning our emergency management director?
No, sir. Thank you.
Okay, with that, Jonathan, if you anything else, if not, I'll go on to our next item.
No, thank you, Chair and Commissioners, and I'll stay on the line through the end because I know you've had the vacation rental stuff on the end for Amy to talk about.
Okay, our next item, our next presentation will be Flagler County Clerk Update by Tom Bexley, Clerk of Circuit Court and Controller. Tom, are you ready to go?
Yes, sir. Good evening, board. Again, Tom Bexley, Clerk of the Circuit Court and Comptroller. I know I'll reiterate this. It's been a rough couple of months for all of us. I've seen you guys kind of individually, but I wanted to address you as a board on a couple of important issues. I'm respectful of everyone's time, and including my own, so I'll try to be as brief as possible and get the information to you and answer any questions or comments you may have. First, I want to talk about the 2019 CAFR, also known as the Countywide Annual Financial Report. I know you're all aware of the legality, purpose, and the potential effects that this document can have on our county. But for the public, I'll just be brief here. The CAFR is an annual statutory document that's very, very extensive in nature. It captures the county's revenues and expenditures for the previous year, as well as a snapshot of the county's assets and liabilities. So many different entities utilize this document to qualify us for grants, loans, bonds, etc. So think of the CAFR as our credit report. The CAFR must be submitted to the Florida State Auditor General by March 31st, but a much more widely accepted date of submission is June 30th. Earlier this year, some statements were made about the timing and submission of the CAFR by some of my colleagues over at the county, and I just wanted to clarify a few things. Nothing was inaccurate, but I want to clarify. And I absolutely appreciate the support and confidence of my office's work with the county's contracted outside audit firm to finalize our CAFR by the June 30 deadline. There are a lot of moving parts to a CAFR that may potentially delay our submission past that June 30th deadline. And preparation for submission typically begins many, many months in advance before a finished product rolls off of the presses, with numerous staff and entities as well engaged in the process. Individual audits are prepared on each constitutional officer. You're all aware there are 5 of us, as well as the largest part of the audit, and that consists of you, the Board of County Commissioners, and all of your activities. As of last week, there were several outstanding items delaying the audit from moving forward and making this June 30th goal. So as a matter of practicality, my office put a deadline on receipt of these outstanding items for Friday, May 15th, in order to give us time to work through the remainder of the preparation necessary for submission by July. And I'm very pleased to report that the lion's share of the outstanding items were submitted by the deadline, allowing June 30th to, I think, remain a very reasonable goal. And those of you commissioners who have been through this process before are aware of the next steps. Once my office has finalized the CAFR, it's then submitted to the county's audit firm for several different levels of review. And once completed, an exit conference is scheduled where an informal presentation will be conducted with key members of county leadership, including Chair Sullivan. And following this presentation, letters of representation are signed by our office as well as the county. And this formally signifies that all the contents of the CAFR are accurate and true to the best of our knowledge. It is only then that the CAFR is formally presented to the board by Carr, Riggs, and Ingram, your contracted audit firm. So then the ultimate question comes, will we make the June 30th deadline? And my short answer is yes, I hope so. I'm optimistic, and it's based on the engagement by my fellow constitutional officers, and more importantly, by the county administrator and his director of financial services. But I have to say, given the tightness of this proposed timeline to get this submitted, and the fact that the presentation must be made to you, the entire board, there is no way the presentation can be made to you a month from now on the second board meeting in June. So therefore, you, the board, would need to schedule a special meeting probably for the last day of the month to give us all the time possible to get this to you in its final state. And I would recommend something for June 30th if possible, or if you have an existing workshop on that day. So that's my audit update. And I know I threw a lot at you, but the bottom line is we, as your comptroller, want this to be submitted by June 30th. It has been a number of years since this has been completed, and there's no fault of anybody in particular. It was a series of circumstances over the years, some leadership issues possibly, but I feel like we're in the best position that we have been in a very long time as far as leadership-wise, constitutionally, officer-wise, and as far as you, the board, and your leadership that you have there. So if there are any questions or comments, I'm happy to address those.
All right, Tom, thanks very much. And that's great if we can get that in on time. I just looked at the calendar. June 30th is a Tuesday, just in case anybody wants to comment along those lines. Any the commissioners? Comments on this? All right, Mr. Cameron?
No, sir, that sounds reasonable, and I really appreciate that report by the clerk. It's been a real team effort to try to get us to this point, and if we can make that goal, it'll be quite an accomplishment for us.
Agreed.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Let me. Yes. Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
I also want to reiterate and thank the clerk for the update. This is a much better conversation than we have had in the past, and the fact that we're close and can possibly hit that June 30th date is real encouraging, again, from what we've had in the past. And, you know, that's a credit to y'all's leadership, and sure appreciate that. I have tried to, I have really encouraged us to try to meet that deadline. So if we do have to have a special meeting, I would be in favor of doing that. But again, I don't want it to be costly. And if I'll take the administrator's advice on that. But again, thank you for the update, and very encouraging news. And I'm glad to see that we're moving in the right direction. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner.
Yeah, Tom, I had also said that this is the first time since I've been doing this for 4 years that you've been able to do this, and congratulations.
That's the first time for me too. So fingers crossed, and I think we'll get there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well done,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I just wanted to say go ahead, Mr. Kim.
I just wanted to say that we have a number of long-term workshop items that we would be able to add on that date so that it wouldn't be a single item meeting.
Okay, well, maybe we'll just turn that over to you to, Tom's asked for June 30th, which is a Tuesday, and maybe we could do that. Unless someone on the board has a problem of being around on the 30th of June, you might just quickly check your calendars if there's anything hard, but I don't see anybody saying anything, so that's, well, thank you very much, Tom.
And
we'll,
one more item, Mr. Chair.
all right, okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
All right, no. I just wanted to extend a little bit more good news for you. We are planning to reopen our office on June 1st. That's 2 weeks from today. This is subject to the Supreme Court and the coinciding circuit court orders. And what this could potentially also mean is there's an expectation of the circuit and the county courts to open as well, at least in some limited faculty. And being respectful of your time, I'll never speak for the judiciary, but I just wanted to talk about a couple of things that my office will do. We're going to require that the public wear face masks to enter this building and to do business with our office. And we're going to extend the same courtesy back to the public. We will all be wearing masks, and a lot of people at the front line will be wearing gloves. We're going to require, the temporary partitions. Like many of the people that are dealing with the public, those plexiglass and glass partitions. I have to say thank you very much to County Facilities. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Heidi Petito, for accommodating us. We have all those temporary partitions in place. We're also providing signage throughout the building to help promote that social distancing, clearly marking spaces to ensure the social distancing, signage for hand sanitizing. We're doing hourly disinfecting in all of the key places that the public and our team members will touch. And basically just doing all the common sense things that everybody's doing to maintain the safety of our team here at the clerk's office as well as the public. But I think it's very important that the country's reopening, the state's reopening, and I think that Flagler County is also doing the same. We're doing it in moderation, we're doing it wisely and smartly, and we'll continue to do that at the clerk and comptroller's office. So thank you again for the county for all of your help, assistance, and support, and providing us all the necessary items that we need to do this safely. And that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Tom, thanks. So I'm not going to have to sit out at the picnic table to sign documents?
No, sir, we're gonna welcome you into the office for a change.
All right, thank you. Any
Mr.
other
Chair?
commissioners? Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
Yeah, for the clerk. So the criminal side has been functioning. I'm just trying to understand a few things. It's my understanding the criminal side has been functioning somewhat normal, I guess. And what I'm trying to understand is, do you have a large backlog of on the civil side of filings and all that kind of stuff? So, because I mean, I hear these things out in the public. You know, I talk to some attorneys and other people, and I'm just curious from your perspective, you know, what you expect or what's going to happen.
We hear, Mr. Chair, am I
happening?
Okay to go?
Yes.
You know, we hear these unprecedented times, and I'm kind of ad nauseum. I'm tired of hearing that term, but we are living in them, and we're experiencing things that we've never experienced before. We have been doing a lot of the criminal proceedings, as many as possible, either virtually and very, very few in person. Jury trials are on hold until July at a minimum. The judiciary, what we're getting from them is that as many civil and criminal proceedings are going to take place via Zoom, and they are going to try to limit the number of people that come into the courthouse. Number one, for safety. Number two, for practicality. Courtrooms, they want to make sure that we maintain that 6 feet of social distancing, and courtrooms that typically hold 125 people are going to be limited 16 to 20 now. So staging is going to be a big issue. That's why the focus on Zoom until we can get to a place where we're all more comfortable being closer to one another. So expect, as you may assume, we in Flagler County board, clerk, and other constitutionals are always on the cutting edge when it comes to technology. And we've proven that to be the case through this crisis, as a lot of the people that do business with our court and our official records are doing it virtually. And that's allowed us to help a little bit with the backlog. But Commissioner O'Brien, to answer your question, there will be a serious backlog. And the place we're going to see it most, I think, is in jury trials. There hasn't been one in several months, and there won't be one for another several months. So we're crossing our fingers, working with the judiciary and with the sheriff to try to get as many people in the courthouse safely to do business, and we'll continue to do so.
So just like on the day-to-day stuff, like recording deeds and bankruptcy filings and liens and judgments and all that kind of stuff, has any of that been going on electronically, or is that all just basically been backlogged?
Yeah, we measure a lot of what happens, and we're a fee-based office, just like any small business, and we gain part of our funding from you through ad valorem tax, but about 75% of our office is funded through fees. So we take the monthly revenue, we can kind of measure exactly what's happening here. And I have to tell you, although our court revenues are greatly diminished, and that's due to a bunch of reasons. One of the big ones, so many fewer traffic tickets are being written, and we're very happy that people aren't getting them. But the reason was that we weren't speeding. There just weren't as many of us on the road, and the sheriff was, cognizant of that. But the official records part of it, 90% of that's done virtually now. And our revenues for April actually increased. In a month when nobody was doing anything, we were doing more. So we're very fortunate to have the means to do that, continue to do business. So people are selling houses, people are building homes. Commerce is continuing to happen in Flagler County. So we're very fortunate to see that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, the other commissioners, just kind of raise your hand if you want to say something concerning this. Mr. Cameron, any comments on this? Okay.
No, I'm happy that the clerk has been able to maintain the civil side also, whether virtually or otherwise, because he is so dependent on fees coming in. And of course, there's been a little anxiety as to how badly he was going to be affected. So that's a very positive report from him.
Yes.
All right. Okay, Tom, well, thank you very much for being here today. And that was all good information. And we're moving along, not super quickly, but we're getting there.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for the time.
Right on. Carlos, are we ready for the Northeast Florida group?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Our third item is economic impacts of COVID-19 on Northeast Florida. Update by Jack Shad and Sean LaHave from the Northeast Florida Regional Council. I attended this briefing, not this particular briefing, but this the introduction to this briefing at the meeting, I guess it was last week. So, Mr. Shad, Mr. LaHave, you ready to go? Well, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. And let me just make sure that Jack has joined us. 1 second. Okay, he's online, so I will start presenting. So good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Sean LaHave, and I'm the Resiliency Coordinator for the Northeast Florida Regional Council. We're located at 100 Festival Park Avenue in Jacksonville, Florida. And the focus of our presentation today is on an economic impact study that we recently conducted utilizing the best economic forecasting technology available in the United States. So to preface this discussion, we recently gave a presentation to our executive committee of the Northeast Florida Regional Council last week, and there was a request to give the same presentation to each local government elected commission. So that's what we're doing today, and we're going to be doing in the coming weeks. So the focus of the Regional Council in this present time is really heavily concentrated on this concept of economic resilience. We want to make sure that Northeast Florida has the information and resources available to make local decisions so that our local economies can bounce back from coronavirus and the impacts that it's had on local communities. So we are uniquely positioned in Northeast Florida to conduct an assessment like this because we have licensing to this software known as REMI, which stands for Regional Economic Modeling, Inc. And they're based out of Amherst, Massachusetts. And our license enables us to have an entire inventory of the regional economy here in Northeast Florida, broken down by industry type, employment figures, GDP, etc. So with that knowledge in hand, we wanted to produce a local study that shows the potential economic impacts that COVID-19 is having on Northeast Florida. On April 9th of 2020, the University of Michigan produced a quarterly economic assessment report that shows drops in GDP across industries at the national level in the United States. We took all of the data from that national level study and we applied it as an input into our local REMI model. And from there, we could produce outputs that show the effects that are likely to happen here in Northeast Florida, where we can break it down by industry. And so the purpose of the presentation today is to provide you all with a preliminary perspective of what was found in this study. And then from here, we are in the process of publishing the actual study itself, which will include background information on how local governments have responded across the region. And then you'll have access to the data tables that we produced showing drops in employment, GDP, and so forth. So for the rest of the presentation, I'm going to pass it off to my colleague, Jack Shad, who is our Economic Development Project Manager, and he will go into the assumptions that were applied to our study, as well as the data that was found afterwards. So Jack, please take it away.
Thank you, Sean. So
Gotcha.
for just a second here. Okay, so we did take as our starting point a model that was put out by the University of Michigan on April 9th, and it is what I would call a best case scenario that shows up, the drop in employment and GDP that we're experiencing right now, but then a strong recovery starting in the third quarter. And they project that the nation will get back up to kind of where it was before this all started around the end of 2021. Other sort of models or ideas that you see for recoveries are what they call the U-shaped recession, which is a longer time at the bottom, or the W-shaped, which, if we have another outbreak sometime over the next year, then that'll bring the numbers back down again. Obviously, this is still very much an evolving situation, and this forecast was done April 9th. That, a month ago seems like kind of a long time right now. So what we wanted to do was, instead of trying to sort of guess what's going to happen, what we tried to do was use the detailed model of our regional economy to look at how things will be in relation to the rest of the country. Regardless of what the final numbers turn out to be, we can get a sense, are we going to do better or worse than the economy as a whole? And so, those of y'all who've been through some downturns in Florida, that we typically do worse than the nation as a whole. And that we don't see any reason why that would be different in this one. Even the best case, scenario is still not a great outlook. If you look at employment, if we see about a 2.7% drop in GDP nationwide, we'll see a little over 4% decline in employment in Northeast Florida as a whole. And keep in mind, we are still adding population and labor force. And so as a region, and our region includes the 7 counties, we're going to be down about 45,000, almost 46,000 jobs where we were in 2019. we'd anticipate if we see a 2.7% drop in the national gross domestic product, we'd expect to see about a 3.1% drop regionally, a little less in Flagler just because of the mix of the economy. And we'd expect to see people's per capita income go down about 5%. And so basically, you can look for recession associated with 19 and the shutdown of 10 to 15% worse than whatever the national effects are. And so that's kind of our big takeaway. As you're watching, stuff on the news, if you just add that 10 to 15% on top of whatever the national news is reporting, that'll give you a better sense of how we're going to experience it here. And the reason for that is because of the way that our economy is put together. We in Northeast Florida are concentrated in some of these industries that are predicted to be especially hard hit. Some of these, are pretty obvious: tourism, restaurants, personal services, others, real estate. Others, I think, haven't necessarily started to really develop yet, like construction and finance. And then some are a little bit counterintuitive, like healthcare, but we're seeing evidence of those as well. And so basically, we're going to continue to update these forecasts. We want to give folks a sense of where this could land. And we're happy to answer any questions. We are working to review our final data, and we will have that report out probably in the next week to 2 weeks.
All right, thank you, Jack and Sean. Do any of the commissioners have any thoughts on this? I think it's important. We're part of this region, and I think what I'm getting out of this is anything we can do to get our businesses back up and running here in Flagler County is important. But to try to beat the numbers they're telling us that are coming. So any of the other commissioners want to say something? I can't see all you right now, so who's ever next, go.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I understand the severity of this, but my question is, what is the length or what is the duration of this? It seems to me that this is actually going to happen. It's going to be pretty bad, but it also seems to me it's going to be short-lived. I mean months, not years. Am I correct in that assumption?
So, Commissioner, the University of Michigan forecast that we relied on ended up sort of getting the nation back to where it was, say, at the end of 2019, basically kind of towards the end of 2021. So I don't know that we're looking at months. I think, a year to a year and a half is probably more likely. Mm-hmm. We've seen, disruptions in businesses. It's going to take people a lot of time to get those businesses started up again. There's just so much uncertainty. Lending is going to be a challenge. And so really, until there's a vaccine or an effective treatment, I think we're going to, there's going to be that uncertainty that really holds back recovery.
Thank you.
Any of the other commissioners? Okay, I'll let it go at that. Thank you for being here via Zoom, Sean and Jack, and appreciate it. We'll stay in touch. Commissioner Mullins and myself are members of the NEFRC, and we'll keep involved with our our member who's been helping us too from your organization down here on a regular basis. And that resilience stuff for our Commissioner Hanson, who you're involved with that this kind of plays into all that, doesn't it, Greg?
Yes, it does.
So with that, thanks for being here, and I'm going to push on again. So thanks for being here, and we'll stay involved.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for your
Chairman.
time.
Thank you.
All righty. The next part of the briefing would be community outreach. Obviously, no one's there. So Lucy, did you have any just general public inputs that you needed to read at this time?
I do, sir. We received 5 comments via email, and I'll go ahead and read them into the record.
Okay.
The first one is from Andre Nazario. He's the co-owner of Casa de la Playa, a group of vacation rentals in Flagler Beach with licenses to operate from Flagler County, the City of Flagler Beach, and the Florida State Department of Revenue. He wants to request that the county commissioners expedite the guidelines for reopening of vacation rentals so that they can take advantage of the Memorial Day rentals and to begin to mitigate the losses they have afforded from the cancellations over the last 2 months. The second comment is from Jane Gentiliud. She says, thanks, I would appreciate if you would read these under public comments. 1, she wants an update on the wastewater plant in Plantation Bay and water. 2, she would like an update on the Beans Landing lawsuit. 3, she would like an update on Hotel California on Old Dixie regarding fixing to code or demolishing, including the removal of the old huge metal empty sign frame that's still sitting in the right of way. And she feels that it would be an issue if we had a hurricane. Not only that, but it's against code and an eyesore. And 4, airport cooperation with flight school hours. She'd like an update on that. She would also like to thank Jerry Cameron for trying to solve everything. It does not go unnoticed. Thank you and stay safe. The third comment comes from Richard Hamilton. It says, Commissioners, my name is Richard Hamilton, a resident of Flagler County. I want to express support for the revised Fund 110 event grant guidelines and my appreciation for the work of Amy Lukasik and her staff, who have come up with a fair and thoughtful means to distribute the limited funds. I would also like to express my hope that the county will also reflect that tourism is not the only reason for supporting arts and cultural activities, which brings untold benefits to our residents, business, present, and future. I hope that you will in due course consider additional ways to support our local cultural organizations both now as they are struggling with the pandemic and in the future when life begins anew. Best regards, Richard Hamilton. Our next comment comes from Kim Strelicki. I apologize, I'm sure that's not how it's said. I feel vacation rentals are safer than hotels and the owners can pick and choose from which states and regions are allowed to rent, so not to invite the hotspot to come in. Also, the owners in between renters have the white glove treatment of sterilizing and disinfecting all surfaces and linens. Also, requirements should be to have hand sanitizers on the premises. Our last comment comes from John Hughes. My name is John Hughes. I own a home in Cinnamon Beach and Hammock section of Flagler County. When my wife and I are not in residence, we offer our home to guests who prefer to stay in a private, safe, comfortable home rather than a hotel, timeshare, or resort. The availability for us to offer our home to visiting guests allows us a level of income which contributes to the payment of property taxes, insurance on the home, and utilities, and more. As a vacation rental home, we employ local staff to clean, repair, and maintain our home. We pay several licensing fees, collect state taxes, follow all state and local requirements, guidelines, and laws. Having to close our vacation rental business as of March 27, 2020 has had a large impact on our annual income. Many of our visiting guests make their vacation plans months, sometimes years in advance. We have had to cancel and or reschedule several guest stays to date and are looking at the need to continue to do so if the ban on vacation rental stays in place. We appreciate that the governor has allowed individual counties throughout Florida to develop a plan that works for their area and to begin the process of reopening vacation rentals in their respective counties. Janice P. Gilly, County Administrator of Escambia County, along with her county commissioners, developed an excellent short-term vacation rental opening plan for their county, which could serve as an excellent template for Flagler County to use as a timely and effective way for vacation rental properties to reopen quickly, safely, and within the guidelines of multiple agencies. Everyone understands how important it is to do our part to ensure that everyone remains as safe as possible. Vacation rental property owners are no different and are ready to step up and take part in revigorating our local community. I would ask the commissioners to add the reopening to the agenda and also direct the county administrator to quickly develop a short-term vacation rental plan similar to Escambia County and submit said plan to Secretary of DBPR as soon as possible. This coming week is Memorial Day weekend. Let's work together to let vacation rentals open on or before Friday, May 22nd, and let's once again welcome visitors to our little slice of paradise we call Flagler. Respectfully, John Hughes. And that's all I have for public comment.
All right. Thank you, Lucy. That's very helpful. And I think on the vacation rental issues, we'll leave that to our discussion with Amy Lukasik on that later in the meeting. The comments by Jane were mostly directed. I think Mr. Cameron would have to answer those. Maybe you can do that during your part of the meeting towards the end, Jerry, or it's up to you, but some of those may take a little while to go through. It's up to you.
Certainly, I can do that at any time you choose, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Well, listen, I want to get to a couple of those other items, and we'll get to them. So I think that was the gist of it, and the Amy, Richard Hamilton, congratulating Amy on some of the changes we've made to the tourist use of the funds. Okay, and the commissioners, the same thing. I think we can probably wait on this till the end, unless you want to say something now on the on any of the things that were brought up. I don't want to stop anybody from commenting if you want to comment. If not, I'm going to go on. Okay, nobody's saying anything. All right, we're to item 6, which is our consent agenda from the constitutional officers and the consent for the Board of County Commissioner, the departments. That's all of 6 and all of 7. So I'll go back, Charlie. Any items that you feel you'd like to further discuss in the consent agenda or have removed?
Yes, I'd like to talk about 7D, Tourist Development Council appointment.
Okey doke. Anything else?
Not for me.
Okay. Mr. Gregg?
I have nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Donnie O'Brien?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
And Joe Mullins?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
All right. I would like to have a little bit further discussion on item 7J. It's a pretty big item concerning money, and I would guess that Mr. Hadid might ask to comment on that. So with that, I'd ask for a motion to approve the rest of the consent agenda with the exception of 7D and 7J.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the consent agenda with the exception of 7D and 7J.
Do I have a second?
Second, Charlie.
All right, further discussion. I'll open it up. Lucy, are there any specific public comments came in on those on the consent agenda items?
No, sir. When the comments came in, I asked if they wanted them read beforehand or if the item was pulled, and all said beforehand. So we are all set.
All right. With that, back to the board. Any further discussion on any of the consent agenda items that are still are remaining in the consent agenda? If
No.
not, I'm sorry, did somebody say something?
None.
Okay. Then I'll go ahead and poll the members for approval of the consent agenda with the exception of 7D and 7J. Charlie Erickson.
I'll go Navy this time with I.
All right. Greg Hansen.
Aye.
Joe Mullins
Yes.
and Donald O'Brien.
Aye.
And myself, aye. That it passes unanimously. So Charlie, we'll go back to you. Item 7D, Tourist Development Council appointment.
When I first looked at this, I kept looking at it and I kept coming up with more questions. One, it says we'd like to appoint Ken Bryant to the category of elected municipal officer for a 4-year term. I understand that he replaced a prior person who was from Flagler Beach, as Ken is, and do we give Flagler Beach a second 4-year? I don't know how long the prior person was in there, but do we continue to want to have a person have now 4 years on top of what was 4 years of guidance by Flagler Beach? In other words, we've got Palm Coast, we've got other jurisdictions that have people that are elected officials, but so that's my first question. The other was that I looked up, the name seemed to be familiar to me, and I was reading about it, and I didn't form any opinions on it, but Mr. Bryant was, I guess one of the folks who stood up when a developer wanted to go into Flagler Beach and found multiple reasons why they shouldn't go in there. And also the developer's attorney, which was Shimento, was considering a lawsuit for him making some false statements. Now, whether this changes my thought that he can perform this job or not, I guess it's just questions I have out there.
Charlie, I understand. I'm the head of the board now. Mr. Bryan has just been recently elected, and maybe Amy, if you had something to say. I do think it's important that we keep someone from Flagler Beach, which is a pretty big center for our vacation rentals. I think that he'd be taking over for Eric Cooley,
right,
who resigned.
Right, correct.
So having said that, if Amy's available, she might want to say, Mr. Bryan did show up, was there as our last meeting, and I think he's a solid citizen with good intelligence and experience in running the government, and that's the person that apparently that Flagler Beach wants to be on the count of the tourism board. So I think number one, from my view, we need someone from Flagler Beach, an elected official from Flagler Beach, and that your other points are well taken. But that's my thoughts. If anybody else wants to chime in on that.
Well, I understand also that Ken served some time up in St. Johns County as a county commissioner, so obviously he's got some background, et cetera.
Yes, he's an experienced government official and with good background. If anybody else, including Amy, if you're available, but I have personally, as head of that council right now, or our head, the commissioner who's on the council, I don't have any problem with Mr. Bryan personally, but Charlie makes some points. Anybody have? Go ahead. Mr. O'Brien, you're on.
I don't even know why we're having this discussion, because, I mean, I understand we would make appointments to the council for, for the allotted slots that the bylaws or the rules stipulate for the council. But I mean, if this is an elected body that's appointed their representative, why would we be even voting on that? They get the, if they have a slot, they're the ones that make the decision as to who represents them on the council, correct? I mean, that's the way we do our appointments as well?
Well, I guess you didn't understand what I said. I was saying, did Mr. Cooley perform 3 or 4 years, and would a second one from the same city deny other locations here from having representation there.
Well, I guess I don't understand, Commissioner, because didn't the city of Flagler Beach have their own council meeting and they voted to appoint Mr. Bryan, their representative in.
Right, but we're making the
Palm
decision.
Coast is represented. Palm Coast is represented on the council.
Yeah.
Well, so you want to challenge me on asking questions? Or
No,
what?
no, not at all. No, I don't
That's
mean
what
that.
it
I don't
sounded
even.
like.
No. My question is why it's even on the agenda, because it doesn't seem like it's action we have to take. That's all I'm asking. I'm not questioning you at all, sir.
Well,
Yeah, right. We always eventually vote on these. Mr. Bryan did attend the last meeting. Mr. Cooley gracefully resigned because he's got other things. He runs a business over in Flagler Beach. And so it's presented to us. And at this point, unless someone wants to say something else.
well, I'd still like somebody to answer. How long has Mr. Cooley been in that position? 1 year or 2 years or?
2 years.
2 years
2
sounds.
years? Okay.
Yeah. So it's not a full, but I think we're always going to have, we want to have a elected representative from Flagler Beach on the Tourist Development Council. I mean, I just think it makes a lot of sense given
Okay, well,
given location. So, but anyway, that's the person who they brought forward, Charlie.
okay, well, as I said, I was trying to get more information. Typically, when we get these, we get that information. We didn't, I had to ask it because this is the first one I've been through, so.
Okay. All right. That's fine. I'll bring it back to the board if for a motion on 7D.
I move we approve item 7D.
We have a second. We have a
Second.
motion and a second to approve the Tourist Development Council appointment of Ken Bryan to the Tourist Development Board. So with that said, Tourist Development Council, with that said, is there any public comment besides what we've already heard? I guess not.
No, sir.
So with that, I'll bring it back to the board for approval. All those in favor of this item signify by saying aye when I call your name. Charlie Erickson,
Yes.
Greg Hansen,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
Commissioner Mullins.
Aye.
All right, and I say aye, so it passes unanimously. The other item, and I brought this up just because I think it's pretty significant, and that is item 7J, is consideration of a resolution authorizing the issuance of the not to exceed $6 million Army Corps Beach Renourishment Local Match Note. The reason I'm bringing this up, if Mr. Hadid is available, kind of give us an update on where we are on the dune restoration and on the Army Corps program, and making sure everybody realizes that we're committing to $6 million of money that we absolutely hope will come back soon. But in the meantime, we're committing to the $6 million to keep the Army Corps program going. And if Mr. Hadid is here, I'd like to just get a quick update from him, if possible.
Mr. Chairman, I may be able to address that. Mr. Hadid, both Mr. Hadid and I are going to bring up the project during our comments. It may be better when we frame this to take it up then.
Okay. Then I'm looking, since I'm looking then for a motion to approve item 7J.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve 7J.
You have a second?
Second.
Second
Charlie.
by Charlie Erickson. And I'll ask for public comment on that. I don't think any of the questions that I heard during the community session related to to this particular program. So with that, I'll bring it back to the board for a vote. All those in favor of item 7J, specifically consideration of resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $6 million the Army Corps Beach Renourishment Local Match Note Series 2020. All those in favor? Mr. Erickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson,
Aye.
Commissioner Mullins,
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Aye.
and I say aye. We'll go on to general business. Before we start this, the three items, I know that Amy's been standing by. Oh, there's Mr. Adi. All right. Amy, I know, has been standing by, and I think there was a lot of interest in the short-term vacation rental plan that's coming forward. So if there's no objection from the commissioners, I'd like to start after we do item 8A, which is on the agenda, that we go to item 8D, the short-term vacation rental plan, and then go back to 8B and 8C. I think I'm doing that because I think there's high interest in that vacation rental item, so I'd like to do that. So with that, if there's no objection, we'll go to general business item 8A, Flagler County Medical Plan Fund update. And that's, is that Sherry? Is she here to do that?
Good evening, Commissioner and staff. It's great to be with you. Once again, my name is Sherry Beignet. I am with the Bailey Group, and I am the benefit consultant for the county. I actually am also a resident here in Flagler County and straight from my home office. So it's great to be with you all tonight. I'm not sure if I have control over the presentation or not. So we can go ahead.
Sherry, it's Jared. I have control. Just let me know when you want to advance.
Okay, you can go ahead and move forward then. So I want to kind of give you an update on where we are with the insurance policy for the current plan year and also make some recommendations of funding for the upcoming plan year. I'm going to start off by reviewing some information about CanRx and your health clinic to kind of give you an idea of how those are running. The first slide shows you the CanRx historical information for all the way from inception to the current date. We currently have about 102 members that are actively using the CanRx International Prescription Program. We've had 1,273 prescriptions filled. You can see we're running at about a 74% savings when we are looking at the prescriptions that have actually been filled compared to what these would have cost had those same prescription been filled through the health insurance policy. So it's just running right and kind of the same as it has all the way through. We have a pretty substantial savings that we can see through that and hope we can continue to see those as we continue to move forward. If you want to move to the next slide.
Can I just make a comment on that CanRx?
Of course.
I just think because the service and the price savings that were occurring, we're getting more participation by the employees here, and that's why the total dollars spent, I think, are explained well to me.
Very good. Yeah, I am very happy to say that we continue to see an increase in the utilization of this program, and we hope that we can continue to see it going forward as well. This is a great way for not only the county to save money, but also the member save money, because there's no way for them to utilize this program. Now, this slide does show you the January 2020 through March of 2020 information specifically. One of the things that I think is interesting as you look at this, even though the month of March was in the middle of our COVID-19 pandemic, we have still seen this program continue to thrive. It has probably slowed down since this time because we have some international shipping delays and things of that sort, but we do want to encourage people to continue to use it, have ways around dealing with those particular situations. So please don't stop using this program because of the pandemic. On just this 1 quarter of utilization, we're seeing a savings annual savings about $271,000 for the medications that are being utilized through this program. Next slide, please. And go ahead and click on, I didn't realize there was animation in this, so I apologize for that. This slide shows us the healthcare plus the health plan plus the clinic information, including the prescription claims. Now, I want to point out that you will see for the 2019-20 plan year, or calendar year, excuse me, this is based on a calendar year basis, not on a plan year basis. You'll see 2019 is significantly higher than the prior period of time. And that is pretty much all into one particular prescription that has been filled. And it is about a $60,000 prescription per month prescription. That medication is no longer going to be utilized going forward, but I do have an alternative program that we're going to be presenting to you in a future meeting, probably in June, to combat these types of very, very expensive medications. Unfortunately, this one, it popped up on there and we weren't aware that it was going to run into that. And so we did want to make sure that we have a solution going forward, but unfortunately we can't do a whole lot going backwards. The individual that did take that medication did hit the stop loss coverage. So you only paid up to the specific deductible on that medication, and anything over that was reimbursed to you. So this slide gives you the full gamut of what this is, but it's very simple. You can see in this slide how costs can just get out of hand very quickly with just one particular medication or one particular very bad health situation.
Aren't we protected a little bit with our stop loss coverages we have out there?
Yes, absolutely. As I mentioned, the individual that was taking this medication did hit the stop loss specific deductible. And so you were, as a county, reimbursed for that.
Well, I've hit it twice in the last 2 years myself. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. And we can move to the next slide. And there you go. Now this shows the health plan costs versus what we would have expected them to be at in the blue for year over year had we not put the clinic in versus where they actually have run year over year in the green. And as you can see, we would have expected in the 2019 year that your expenses at a 9% trend from 2010 to 2019 would have been coming in about $16,902 per employee per year. But because of the clinic, we're only seeing expenses at about $10,348 per employee per year. So we can definitely see that the clinic has worked. We have had an average of 4.9% increase since the health plan was implemented. And that's not what's happening in the industry. Right now, we're seeing in the industry healthcare expenses going up, as mentioned, by 9% trend. It has slowed slightly to about 7% over the last couple of years, but it's higher than 9% in a few years in there as well. So average is about 9%. We can move to the next slide. So this slide gives us an idea of what's actually happening just within the health plan itself. So these are claims that are going through the medical plan, not including, some of this information does include your expenses under CannaRx as well as the clinic. The first two pieces are year to date, the 2018 to 19 year, and then looking at the same period, 2019 to 20. This time last year, we were upside down in the health plan by $776,000. This year, we've been able to make that up. The majority of that is because we actually had a very large claim reversed. That particular individual, instead of being under the health plan as their primary, had another plan that needed to pay primary, so it was reversed out. And then you can see year end, last year we ended up upside down by $1.2 million. If we continue on track where we're at right now, we will make up about $1 million of that, but we're still going to be making up a little bit of the upside down from the prior period of time. We can move forward. This gives you an idea of your high cost claimants. We typically see your highest cost claimants making up at least a quarter, if not more than a quarter of the expenses. And that has definitely been the case with your plan in previous years. This year, we have one individual who has hit the stop loss of $175,000. Unfortunately, that person is no longer with us, and therefore we will not continue to see any claims from that individual. We have 3 individuals right now that are over $50,000, and nobody in the $100,000 threshold. Last year, as you can see, we actually had 5 individuals that hit the $175,000 stop loss amount, 1 over 100, and 20 individuals over 50,000. Last year was really not a great year for a multitude of situations. We had a lot more high cost claimants, and particularly of those over the $175,000 mark. We have an average trend over the last 5 years of a negative 3.8% for your health insurance plan, which is fantastic. As I mentioned, trend right now is running between 7 and 10%, depending on who you ask. So far this year, because of that large reversal, we are 44% below last year, but we were 37.5% above the prior year. So although we have a great 5-year look, we do have to make up a little bit from last year and move forward. The employee premiums are shown on this slide, and you can see from this slide that we have not had an increase in the premiums for the employees since October 1st of 2016. So we've been able to maintain the same premium for the employees since that point in time, which is again very unusual. I'm seeing along much larger increases. And increases period, which you guys have been able to not do. And then also your funding as an employer stands at $10,500 per employee per year. This is, again, very competitive marketplace. And as you can see, we're still well below where we were back 2006 to 2008 time period, where we were 13,000 a year. And you can move forward.
Okay.
So one of the things that I've done is I've taken the data for your plan and sent it to our actuaries and asked them to calculate what we need to do with our funding for the upcoming plan year. And they estimate that based on the current situation, we need to increase your funding by 2.79%. That it constitutes about $260,000 per year. Now, I do want to mention to you that I had them do this before the COVID-19 pandemic. Since that time, they actually have added some additional requirements for the groups that they're calculating, and I'm seeing coming from the actuaries slightly higher numbers than what we received from them for you. We have a couple of ways to increase the fund. Obviously, we can do it. We can the fund. We can make changes to the plan design. I actually put together 3 recommendations for you and kind of giving you some ideas of different things that you might want to consider doing. Option 1 would be for the employer to increase the entire increase. So that $260,000 a year would go to the county. By doing this, the employer contribution would need to increase from $10,500 per employee per year to $10,815 per employee per year. So that's only $350 more per employee per year than it is now. By doing that, we would not have to touch the employee contributions at all. They would be able to remain at the $25 employee-only premium. I don't have the other ones in front of me to look at, but if you want to look back at those employee premiums, we can definitely do that. Actually, I think it's on the next screen. So if we want to move forward, that would be option 1. There we go. Now you can see those monthly costs right now. The second thing that we could do is we could have both the employee and the employer increase the funding by 2.79%, which is that percentage that the actuary gave me. This would increase the employer contribution from $10,500 to $10,793. So $293 increase per employee per year. And then the employee contributions, you can see, would go up very minimally. You'd see a 70-cent per month increase for employee-only coverage. And then in families would go up by $7.68 per month. And you can see the amounts for the employee and spouse, and employee and child or children as well. And then the third option, thank you, for the employee to absorb the entire 2.79% increase. Again, because this is $260,000, this is going to increase the employee contribution significantly. It would actually increase their contribution by 53%. You can see that employees would see an increase of $13.26 if they have employee-only coverage, and family coverages would go up by $145 per month. Comparatively, they're still very competitive, but in today's situation, I'm not sure this would be my recommendation. I also do want to mention that I don't recommend making plan design changes at this point in time. Your plans, copays, deductibles, etc., are very competitive in the marketplace, and I think we can keep those the same as they are today. And then I have a couple of programs that I'm going to recommend to you, including that a change to that prescription benefit to help deal with those higher cost prescriptions if another one happens to pop up. And then also encourage people to continue to use CannaRx and the clinic. Kind of my overview. Do you have any questions for me?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Chairman Sullivan. Are you asking us tonight, I heard you say something at the end there, to select one of those options or recommend one of those options tonight? Option 1, 2, or 3 on the funding?
I think it would be great if we could get a decision. We don't have to make a final decision right away, but in order for us to get moving forward on the open enrollment, we will want to go ahead and do that sooner rather than later.
So I'd like to have the other commissioners, if they want to make a point about that, go ahead at this point, and then we'll see if we want to actually make not a motion right now. We want to discuss those 3 options.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So this data is based on from the start of the plan year through the end of March?
The end of March, yeah. April data just hit yesterday, and you had a decent month in the month of April, but it doesn't impact the recommendation really.
When's plan enrollment start?
We typically run your open enrollment in July and have it finish at the end of July.
I, for one, would want to see at least a couple months more worth of data to make a decision. It just seems kind of early, and we're in unknown territory right now, and to commit to something until we have a little bit more data given the circumstances.
We'll be able to wait until the data is available, because that won't give us enough time to get everything prepared for the employee communications. But we can definitely go ahead and add in the April data and provide that to you so you can take a look at it. As mentioned, the April data, which came in just yesterday, is pretty average, and I don't think it'll impact your recommendation much at all.
Well, I'd also like to, I mean, we kind of went through those slides fast, and that's the first time I've seen them for this year. And, you know, I wanted to dig into those a little bit. So again, I wouldn't feel comfortable wanting to make a recommendation today, Mr. Chair, but again, that's just my opinion at this point.
Okay. And any of the other commissioners? Mr.
Yeah,
Mullins?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mullins has his hand up.
I don't, I concur with Commissioner O'Brien. I think I'd like to let this, kind of look at this a little more and see.
You got it.
Okay. Anybody else? Raise your hand if you want to speak.
Charlie?
Charlie?
Yeah, I too would echo the two prior comments for a little bit of a wait. You know, we just got Jerry's budget in the mail here to start taking a look at too. So I think it's kind of premature to talk about a lot of this stuff right now.
And Mr. Hanson?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have that data forwarded to us, that presentation, so we can have it and be able to look at it and massage it. If you could make that happen, that'd be great.
All right, I think we can make that happen. Who hasn't spoken? Just me. So I want to point out that June is kind of going to be a quick month. Our first meeting is June 1st, and our second meeting then will be June 15th. So is there kind of a thing that we need to get it done by July? To Sherry, was that did you say that?
Yeah, you actually need to make the decisions probably by at least the end of, probably middle of June, in order for us to be able to have the data prepared and the materials prepared for the employees to review, so they can make their decisions in the month of July.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to know. And so at this point, I get the feeling from members that unless somebody else wants to say something, that we would delay a decision on those three options until at least the first meeting in June and possibly the second. Is that kind of where we are? I think so. I don't think we need to vote on that. Were there any other items that you were going to cover, Sherry, that you haven't covered yet? You said something about you had a couple other things on changes or add-ons.
Time, we actually will have a couple of other items. I believe there's for the June meeting.
Okay, all right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I would recommend that we distribute this presentation immediately, and we put this on the June 1st agenda in case there is anything that would cause a delay to another meeting. Okay. And that way we could be sure that we would have this done during the month of June.
All right. I think that's in sync with what you've heard from the commissioners.
Can we add the April data?
Yeah, I can go ahead and we'll send the material over to you all, and then I will go ahead and update the claims data through the month of April. I'll do that tomorrow and get that back over to staff so that they distribute the April data to you as well.
Okay.
Any of the commissioners have anything more on this? I don't see anything more. Well, Sherry, thank you very much. It's good data, and I think we're doing well. And I don't think anybody wants to say we're not, but we want to make sure we make the right decision with the latest data available. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, with that, I did feel that it makes sense to now jump to item 8D. I should have done it originally, which will be the short-term vacation rental plan consideration. So Amy, are you available to go ahead and present that?
Moving her up now, one moment.
Okay. And you should have all received this briefing, but I think she'll have it. Okay, there's Amy. Very good.
Hi, good evening, Chair and Commissioners. So on Friday, the governor announced through Executive Order 20-123, he stated that counties may seek approval to operate vacation rentals with a written request from the county administrator and the county safety plan for vacation rental operations to submit to the DBPR secretary for approval. So immediately on Friday evening and over the weekend, I began collaborating with our counterparts in the region, which includes St. Johns County, Clay County, Duval, and Nassau. And of course, each county will have its unique issues that have to be addressed, but we felt that the more unified our plans were as a region, the more likely they would get approved and also may help the turnaround time. So our plan, our suggestions for phase 1 of reopening the vacation rentals in Flagler County. And like I said, each one of us has discussed these items with our appropriate county officials and emergency management. We wanted to remain consistent as a region, also because it helps with the customer for consistency and clears up any confusion. Also, a lot of our larger vacation rental property management company have properties all along the Northeast region. So we felt that was also helpful for them. So what we're looking to do is we want to get our plan approved through you tonight so that we will then have the capability for these vacation rental owners to open if they wish to do so, as long as they agree to accept the plan that ultimately gets approved from DBPR and the governor. So with that, I'd like to get into some of the high points of the plan. And Carlos, are you able to pull those up?
Sorry, Amy, it crashed on me. Going there now.
Okay, I can go ahead and start. And again, what you see in our plan, it is consistent with the other counties that I listed earlier. So for visitors originating from areas identified by Governor DeSantis as high risk through his current executive orders must be quarantined for the period established in that order.
Can you open up the agenda items? And I'm sorry.
Also, for under social distancing, we are also staying in line with the current guidelines as far as the 10-person occupancy cap at this time for the vacation rental units. We are also asking the owners to do a pre-arrival health screening questionnaires, which must be completed within 24 hours to arrival. This asks them where they've been the past 14 days, what their home city and state origin is. As far as communications with the guests, we are displaying and providing them all the current executive orders through the state and the county, including the safety plans. And for vacation rentals, there we go, that are being managed with local or national firms, the firm that is processing those bookings must provide all the information for each booking, and anyone that is coming from the hotspots as required under the current executive orders must report the names of the individuals to the health department here in Flagler County. And then under cleaning and sanitation, I can tell you this, the DBPR, after the governor made his executive order, they included a total of 9 recommended safety measures and other best practices. And our property owners and management companies far exceed those 9 items. In fact, I have received from numerous management companies their guidelines and their plan to safely reopen, and these include 3 pages of the most detailed checklist. So I'm confident that the larger companies are ready to go, and we are able to provide from our office those checklists to those individual property owners that may not have access to that. So just to close it out, to give you an idea of what we're looking at, approximately 90% of our tourism rental products are currently affected by this plan. So again, it allows them the opportunity to make the decision if they want to reopen or not, and accept our plan. So Clay County, they are probably the closest to getting approved. And we had the Panhandle actually submit their plans on Friday late afternoon already. So we had a template to work from so that, again, we stay unified and consistent as a region. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Back to the commissioners. Please raise your hand if you have a question. Mr. Mullins.
Yeah, I just want to want to read something that was sent to me too. This is by the Hammock Beach Resort. And it's where they were inquiring, and he just wanted to put this on the statement. Hammock Beach has been preparing to reopen safely for a month now. We have implemented many new social distancing standards and sanitizing SOPs, in addition to our PPE for our service professionals. It's heartbreaking to be shut down for Memorial Day weekend. We are here to assist in any way possible. Thanks for your support. And I've been getting these I've probably gotten 15, 20 of these emails from people throughout the county just asking about it, about getting vacation rentals open. And I think really the key is the question that they've kind of thrown out there is how is this virus so smart that it knows the difference between a hotel room and a vacation rental? So, with that being said, I think, and it being such a big part of our economy, I think we do need to look at this. And Amy, I think that's a really good proposal. I want to commend you for getting on top of it as quick as you did.
Thank you. We do have a couple of wordsmith items that we will clean up. We did have Bob Snyder also give his blessing. We felt that was important. So he did have a couple suggestions, so we'll be including those as well. And I did receive the Hammock Beach reopening COVID plan, very detailed, and I have that here to share if you wanted to see it, or I can email it to you as well.
All right, please raise your hand if you want to speak. Okay, my question is that this is going to be a letter basically to Secretary Halsey Beshears, if I read this correctly. It'll be signed by Mr. Cameron, but it'll be on our letterhead showing all the commissioners. So my other question is, this is a plan approval for the entire county, not just the unincorporated areas.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, and have you done any coordination with like the city of Flagler Beach on this?
Yes, I did speak to the mayor to let her know what we were planning to do, and I just reiterated to her that if there were any HOAs that were not comfortable yet opening, or any individual who rent their home that were not ready yet to open or did not agree with the plan, then they are free to remain closed.
Right, and this doesn't really affect whether it's under our ordinance that we have for vacation rentals or the city ordinance for vacation rentals. It's an overall approval for vacation rentals, and then it's up to the individual units to
Yes,
either accept or not.
It's our safety plan for approval for phase 1 reopening of short-term rentals.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioners?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
And I apologize, I don't know the answer to this question. Just there's so much data that goes past us. Amy, what's the situation? Just reiterate the situation that hotel motels and the campgrounds are under as of right now.
So the hotels are able to operate. Everyone else cannot at this time. So the Hammock Beach Resort, they can operate the lodge, which is 20 rooms,
right? But
the main building, they cannot.
Mm-hmm.
Without this. Is that right, Amy?
What was that?
Without what we're talking about right
Correct.
now. Once,
Correct.
yeah, okay, right.
So once, and we're hoping that, Secretary Beshears is understanding of the Memorial Day weekend. I'm sure they understand the gravity of that, and we're hoping that we can get this turned around quickly on our end, so that maybe by the end of the week we can have an answer back from DBPR and the governor.
Okay, Mr.
But regardless,
so go ahead, finish, Mr. O'Brien, then I'll go to Hanson.
I'm sorry, I apologize. So all the hotels that are along 95 in our county can operate as normal, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They're mainly taking essential travelers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, Amy, when I read through that, just a quick question. If someone comes here from New Orleans or from New York, and they would fall under the 14-day quarantine, correct?
Yes.
So they could rent a house at the beach, but they couldn't leave the house. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's correct. Okay.
Lucy, have you read the vacation rental notes earlier in the meeting? Do you have anything else that's come in since concerning?
I do. Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So we had a comment from Brad West. He submitted his comment via YouTube. He said, "This is a public health crisis that resulted in an economic problem. The commission and county should be focused on the health crisis 100% and be able to fix this economic problem. How do you plan on handling Memorial Day?" The other comment comes from Ron Boyce. He submitted his comments via email, and he said, "As of now, our supermarkets do not have enough." Wait a minute. Yeah, it all ties in. Talks about food in the supermarkets and how do you plan to add 1,000 or 2,000 people to it if you bring people in? How do you protect the citizens of the county by reopening vacation rentals? At this time, the numbers of COVID-19 have increased. Who is going to check on the occupancy of the short-term vacation rentals to ensure they did not exceed 10? Who's going to check on the occupants of these short-term vacation rentals to ensure they are not from other states or countries? Who's going to make sure that they are cleaned according to CDC? Who is going to set up the 24/7 hotline to report complaints? Will the county have personnel available to respond to these complaints 24/7? Will the county monitor advertising done by these short-term vacation rental sites? And then he thanks you for all of your work for our residents living in Flagler County. And that's the end of public comment.
All right, thank you, Lucy. Now, I'm going to bring it back to the commissioners for a possible motion, after which we'll have further chance to address the issue. So are any of the commissioners prepared to make a motion to either approve or disapprove what you've just been provided on vacation rentals?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we forward our plan to DPPR for possible approval.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mullins, and Mr. Hanson made the motion. Okay, back for any further comment concerning this. The way this is going to be done, I think everybody got a copy of the proposed letter. I still think that we as the board need to approve it. And our county administrator, before we go any further, any comments concerning this, you'll be the one that's signing this apparently.
No, I reviewed several drafts of that, and a final draft, both the emergency management director and the Board of Health have signed on to, and in the event that we are going to open those, it's absolutely necessary to get that to Tallahassee for approval. So I have no negative comments on it.
All right, just the thought of how we enforce this. Any thoughts along those lines?
Well, the health department is generally taking the lead on looking into those kinds of situations, whether it's nursing homes or whatever. Also, DPR is responsible for some of that enforcement. If we had a complaint on it, it's possible that code enforcement could be involved. I don't really see it as a law enforcement issue.
All right, back to the commissioners, Mr. Hanson.
Well, it is a law enforcement issue in some cases. They monitor for disturbances and parties that are out of hand, and that. And the sheriff does that. But I think it's fair. Jerry's answered pretty much your question, Mr. Chairman, and who's going to enforce all this stuff. And I think it's going to be imperative on the homeowner or the Airbnb or whoever's renting them to limit the number of people to 10. And if somebody violates that, then
Yes,
The real hammer in this is that they could end up losing their ability to be a vacation rental.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
Owners and managers are jointly and liable for any violations, according to DPPR.
Mr. Mullins?
I want to say, you know, based on what we've seen from county residents to this point, and our numbers being as low as they are, we've had tremendous amount of cooperation from county residents. And, you know, I think we're going to be fine moving forward. I think if there is a complaint, we address it and deal with it. I don't think that the sheriff's office or anybody should cherry pick what they respond to. I think we just need as a community to respond and do these things. So, but again, I don't think we're going to have, I think if the community continues in pace of what they've done, we're going to see a good cooperation from them.
All right, Mr. O'Brien.
Just one other thing, I agree with that. I think people and our owners want to do the right thing. You're never going to prevent some bad actors. That happens regardless of whether we have a pandemic or not. And you know, we have an existing code that we can still enforce. So again, I'm going to fall on the side of people and our owners wanting to do the right thing almost every time. Again, you can't always control every last bad actor. Things happen.
All right, any of the other commissioners? I don't see any hands raised. We had the public comment that came in. So bring it back. I'll poll the board, the commissioners for approval. So Mr. Erickson.
Yes.
Mr. Hanson.
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien.
Aye.
Mr. Mullins.
Aye.
And I say aye, so it passes unanimously. Good work, Amy. We do appreciate the efforts you made, along with our emergency director and Bob Snyder, who that was key to me that he was willing to go along with us, our public health director. All right, with that, that was item 8D, short-term rental vacation plan approved. We'll go on to item 8B, back to our former schedule. And the title of this, you don't have any other backup. The title of this is Construction of New Sheriff's Operations Center Discussion. With that, I'm turning the gavel over to Mr. Mullins, and that for the purposes of me speaking.
The chair would like to recognize Commissioner Sullivan.
I put this, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I put this item on the agenda because as of last meeting, we were still in the situation where we have not given a construction go-ahead to the new Sheriff's Operations Center building, because we still revert back to the April 6th meeting when we said to put both buildings on the same location. That appears to have been probably not possible. And as I said at the last meeting, I just want to get this moving. We've taken a long time. The deadline I had previously been given by our county administrator was we need to go ahead by May 1st. It's now May 18th. So I'll open this up to discussion, but I'm going to make a motion. And the subject is construction of new Sheriff's Operations Center building. The motion as follows. The time has come for the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners to make the final decision on the location and go ahead with the construction of the new Flagler County Sheriff's Operations Center building. The location will be the land previously purchased by the county in Bunnell for, at that time, the site for the new South Library. The county administrator is directed to take this action immediately, and in addition, pursue the purchase of land across the street belonging to the First Baptist Church of Bunnell for the eventual site of the Flagler County South Library. That is my motion.
All right, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that motion for discussion purposes.
All right. All right, we've got a second. Do we have any discussion now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from the county administrator.
Well, certainly if we are waiting to see the outcome of our negotiations with the Baptist Church, that would delay the project probably 3 months to get that fully in place and to get that property closed. While those discussions look very positive at the moment, we have a letter of intent. If in fact we want to proceed expediently, this motion would certainly do that. Design would begin tomorrow once they know exactly what site we're going to put it on.
Question, would that decision though, if we decided to put one on one side of the street, affect the location of the sheriff's operations center on the other side of the street? Would we move the foundation, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely, the whole plot plan would change.
Okay.
The one that we have with both buildings located there is a little less than ideal. They would resituate that to make it ideal and to accommodate for future expansion should it be needed, and a better parking situation.
Okay.
Still lost. I'm not understanding what we're even trying to accomplish here and what the deal is.
Okay.
At present, Commissioner, I have been directed by the board to put both buildings on the library site. That has created a situation where the architects said that that's doable, but it's less than ideal. Subsequent to that decision by the board, the possibility of acquiring the land across the street, additional land, we're going to acquire some anyway through a previous agreement, but the additional land would make it large enough to put a library on. So we're in those discussions, but because that is a real estate transaction, it would take several months to finish the negotiations and get a closing, which would delay the project because you couldn't begin design until you knew exactly where you're going to put it. This motion is designed to begin the design process and ultimately the construction of the Sheriff's Department by probably at least 3 months sooner than we could start otherwise.
And just I might add that one of the reasons that I think we need to do this is for a lot of reasons, based on the whole history of this. Remember, our Sheriff's Department is temporarily still in the courthouse. We had promised a couple of years time there. It doesn't look like we'll make that no matter what we do. I just think that we're at the point, the Sheriff's Operations Center is the highest priority we have right now. Our librarian, at the trustees meeting I finished, would rather go across the street and to the other side. And I believe the sheriff would too. I have not discussed this with the sheriff. It's our building, it's our decision. I just think the time has come to make a decision. We can't keep kicking this down the street. We're going to get in the middle of an election. We may have new commissioners, so on and so forth. I think all of us here have been involved in this, and I think it's time to move on. And we have to do something to change the decision we made on April 6th when we said both buildings would go on the library site. So that's the reason for the motion as far as I see it.
Mr. Cameron, are we at the point where we decided and made a outcome we can't put both buildings on the same site?
No, sir, we can put both buildings on the same site, but it will be less than ideal. The architects have shown us some conceptual plans of how that would be done, but it is a situation that would not allow for future expansion of either the library or the Sheriff's Department, and the parking situation would be less than ideal. Mr. Chairman, I believe the sheriff might be available and standing by if you want to hear from him on this.
Okay.
Yes, I'd love to hear from them. As I say, I came up with this on my own and had a short discussion with you, Jerry, but I haven't discussed this with the other commissioners. So yes, I have discussed it with our librarian. But anyway, go ahead. If the sheriff's there, please speak.
Mr. Chairman, this is Sheriff Rick Staley. I was on a conference Zoom call with both the architects from the library and ADG, which is for the sheriff's building. And while you can force the two facilities on that property, here is what it does to you. We have a study that says by 2045, the sheriff's office will need 81,000 square feet. You have authorized a 50,000 square foot building with a site plan for a 30,000 square foot addition sometime in the future. You lose that completely if you put us both on the same acreage. The other thing that happens, according to both architects, is that your infrastructure costs significantly increase because there is not enough property to do open air parking, drainage, retention ponds, that now you have to pipe it with drains in the parking to probably across the street to an existing retention pond. So your costs go up. The library has no future for expansion. The sheriff's office would have absolutely no future for expansion. The parking is extremely tight. There is only, I believe, one way in or out for the sheriff's side of that, and the architect recommends at least two. So in my opinion, that if you still combine us on the same property, which can be done, you are doing a disservice to a sheriff 15, 20 years from now. And the same thing with the library, because you will have landlocked them with no expansion. So you're almost repeating same mistakes that have been made historically. And from what I understand from the church, they are extremely interested in working out a deal with the county, but that's for your county administrator to explain. We also cannot have, tonight was the first night I heard a 3-month delay. Originally, I had heard it would be 5 to 6 months delay if we waited to see the outcome of the church. If decisions had been made long before tonight, why don't you just think of this? We would be moving into a new building probably within the next month. We've been operating for 2.5 years in a very decentralized, inefficient operation. And the men and women have been resilient. They've delivered more than a 36% crime reduction to this community in 3 years. And thanks to the clerk working with us, we were able to get enough space cobbled together that we could do some initiatives. But we have to get moving. We can't wait any longer for these kind of decisions, because right now you have the architect and you have the contractor on a total hold pattern. They can't draw and design. And as part of my conference call, Zoom meeting with them, we did discuss, part of the design for this building and so forth. So they're ready to go. They just need to know, are we together on one property, or is this property going to be the sheriff's office with room for expansion? And I think that's what's being asked tonight.
Well, just point of clarification, we've not been delayed. We've been working under the premise that we were going to go with the both buildings on the one location, correct? This is changing that decision.
That's correct, but the architect can't design until they know for sure. And I believe the county administrator is recommending that 7.5 acres is just for the sheriff's office, but I don't want to put words in it.
Mr. Cameron, how many acres is over there at the site near the EOC?
At which site?
The site for the sheriff's and the library, how many acres is that total?
I think that if our memory serves me correctly, there was a total of about 14, but not all of it was usable.
Right, there's approximately 14. How much is over by the library in Palm Coast where we were going to put the sheriff's?
14.
So it's about equivalent, and it's got a library on it right now. Okay.
So that's correct. This is the sheriff. May I interject? The buildable site of that 14 acres is only 8.4 acres, according to the architect and the design people. That's why it's so tight for the two buildings and the community center that was discussed.
Any other comments or questions?
Yes, I have, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Sullivan. I do want to point out that over the years, one of the things that I intended to have put in, and it was agreed to, that the South Library would have the ability to include a replacement for the Wickline Center, which is currently in Flagler Beach for our senior meals. And we were pretty much in agreement. You know, a lot of things have gone up and down over the years, but I don't want to agree to something where there's no possibility of including that community center replacement for the Wickline Center.
So what, Mr. Chair, another question?
Yes, I'm not the chair.
No, I know. I'm asking the chair, Mr. Vice Chair, who's the chair for this item.
All B.
So what, if I'm understanding, the across the street property that we don't own yet, if we did design the library on that site, that gives enough additional land to include a replacement for, possibly include a replacement for the Wickline Center for the senior services, meals, and meeting space, correct?
Yes, sir. The multi-purpose facility that would accommodate those services is included in the contemplated design for the library.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? At that point, I'd like to, we've got a motion and a second motion. I'd like to go ahead and vote on it. And if we can individually roll call with Charlie.
I guess I'm sitting here. We've talked about 3 or 4 different things. What was that motion? Just restate it, please.
I'd be happy to read it again,
Sure.
if you'd like me to, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'll go ahead and read the motion. The time has come for the Flagler County Board of County Commissioners to make the final decision on the location and go ahead with the construction of the new Flagler County Operations Center building. The location will be the land previously purchased by the county in Bunnell, or at that time, the site for the new South Library. The county administrator is directed to take this action immediately, and in addition, pursue the purchase of land across the street belonging to the First Baptist Church of Bunnell for the eventual site of the Flagler County South Library.
Thank you.
Okay. Let me, you know what, one thing I need to do real quick, we have any public comment on it? Lucy?
We have no public comment on this item, thank you.
Okay, and if we can go back to Commissioner Erickson, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Aye.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Aye.
And I as well. So with that, it's passed. And I'm going to hand it back over to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Mullins. And we have one item left on our business item. And this is the one I actually delayed it. It's 8C, open letter from leaders of Flagler County and its municipalities, a discussion. This letter I was hoping had been received by everybody today because it's a fairly long letter. And it discusses what I would eventually think would be some kind of a workshop and an interlocal policy to update our overall policies in the county on how to handle emergency situations, because COVID-19 has really given us a different crack at this. Now, has everybody had a chance to look at the letter now? I'm sorry this is happening, but we have to look at this today. Again, as I'm reading this, the letter was signed by all the mayors, including Melissa Holland, Linda Provencher, Catherine Robinson, Stephen Emmett, and Leslie Babonis from Marineland, and your city managers, including Matthew Morton, Larry Newsom, Alvin Jackson, and Jerry Cameron. First responders, Jerry Forte, Jonathan Lord, and Bob Snyder from the emergency management side. So I'm going to open it up for comment here, but I'm a little worried that you haven't had a chance to look at it. So with that, I'll open it up to the commissioners. I see Mr. Mullins raised his hand.
Yeah, I mean, I read it and I'm a little confused because I thought we were working together. You know, we're having morning calls. I think there's some concern that there's two sources of information going out there. We've got Alert Flagler, which should be the countywide information that goes out. And then we've got other cities having certain media things coming out. And, you know, other than the, you know, I'm assuming we did work together, other than the article that the blogger did saying that the cities were, when we decided to open the parks, the cities were forming and going against it. Now, I can't tell if this guy's all over the place in his stories, so I can't tell if that's something accurate or not. And Mr. Cameron can certainly answer that, but I think it's important we're together. And, ultimately, I think we are. And my only concern is when one entity does something that, I'm here, I don't know, I can't speak for you guys, but I'm here to represent the people. And if something is going against a person's constitutional rights or they feel that way, I think it's time to listen to them. And but I do definitely think that we should sit down and discuss emergency operations and how it's going to be out there and put out there, and what people should be on calls, if managers are continually on calls or if they're popping in and out. We've got to be moving together, and that's a responsibility of the county. But at the end of the day, there's been a lot of things occurred in here that have been questioned and challenged constitutionally, and there's areas with lawsuits, counties with lawsuits, and I certainly don't want to see us get in any of that based on what's going on. So
I would like to hear from the other commissioners too on this, if you've had a chance to look at the letter now. Anybody want to raise their hand? Commissioner O'Brien.
I didn't see the letter till
Right.
When we started the meeting. I did try to read in between things. There's nothing I disagree with in the letter. I'm not sure what action we need to be taken other than acknowledging the letter, I guess. Looks, our administrator signed it, our emergency manager signed it, so not really sure what additional actions need to be taken here. And can Mr. Cameron give us some background on maybe the genesis of the letter and why he signed it, or what the story is?
Well, I'm not sure about the genesis of it, but having read it, I have promoted cooperation and unity since I arrived here. It would be disingenuous of me to refuse to sign a letter like that. I don't see anything in that letter that I see as problematic. I think that if there is any direction from the board, it would be for us to put together a working group to see what sort of document that ultimately might come out of this.
Mr. Hanson.
Well, the way I read that, they're addressed, they think there's a problem. Why would you write that letter if you didn't think there was a problem? So I would like to go one step further and ask them, what's the problem? Why'd you feel necessary to write that letter? I don't get it. I mean, I agree with everything in the letter. I mean, I support everything that's in that letter, but why'd they feel the need to write that letter?
And I think the reason that I wanted to bring this up to all the commissioners is I think they're really asking us as commissioners and me as your chairman to also sign the letter. I haven't signed the letter. And so I think that's one thing they'd like us to do. My one problem is we have existing policies, and I agree with pretty much everything in the letter. I am leery of who gets to make decisions. In other words, if we're worrying about closing the bridge because of a hurricane, I agree, the emergency managers and sheriff, they do that. But as you notice in this COVID-19 thing that we're in the middle of, an elected official is making decisions for the state. It's not the emergency manager for the state, it's the governor who makes final policy decisions. Because in COVID-19, it's different because they last a little bit longer and they apply to a whole bunch of different things that normally we would get involved in making decisions, like vacation rentals, things like that. So again, I don't have any big problem what's said in the letter. The one thing that's my biggest issue is I don't want to just turn over decision-making to the emergency management team in all cases. So that's my only comment, but I think, to be honest, I need a recommendation from the commissioners at this point, given who's already signed this letter, as should I go ahead and sign the letter for the commission? And second, maybe a second motion to say, establish a working group with the idea of looking at our emergency management situations now for some kind of interlocal policy that would apply across the county. Now, we don't have to do that, but that's kind of where I think we are at this point. Mr. Mullins.
I think we do need to make a working group and discuss it, because just like the park situation, that sent a lot of confusion out there. And, you know, the county cooperated. They did what they were supposed to, the residents. It sent total confusion out there. And I think it's very important that we're unified together, we're talking, we're working, and there is a control over there. I mean, there's a power struggle still going on. And, you know, that's as blatant as you can say it. And it needs to not be when you're dealing with citizens' lives. It needs to not be when you're dealing with situations. So I really feel like I'd like to make a motion that we ask our manager to create a working group and we establish kind of the procedure and the process of how stuff's going out.
So that's the motion by Mr. Mullins. Is there a second? No second at this point. So I will ask.
Mr. Chair?
Right. Yes, go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
I would offer a different motion.
Okay.
My motion would be that we accept and sign the letter as basically as a statement of principles. Let me hold off on the motion for a second. If I could just make one comment, which is, I don't think any of us, and I don't think the intent of that letter was for any municipality or the county to give up their statutory responsibilities. I think that's pretty clear, and I think we've been functioning in that mode. Mm-hmm. But in terms of, so I'll make a motion that we would sign the letter or adopt the letter as a statement of principles, and further, if the intention was to have additional dialogue on how we could do things better from a communication standpoint, I would say that we should be part of that discussion, and whether we empower the administrator to do that or somebody else, I don't care, but I think that would be fine. So.
Second.
Second by the motion is by Mr. O'Brien. Second is by
Mr. Hanson.
Commissioner Hanson, but I just want to make sure I understand before I go forward with this. What we're asking for here, then, it sounds like the only thing you're asking on this motion is for me as chair to sign the letter for the commissioners. Is that correct, Mr. O'Brien? That's why I was stuttering. I was trying to make sure.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Okay. We could have more motions on this item,
Yeah.
but that's one, and we have a second on that. So back to the commission for comment. Any of the commissioners want to make comment concerning this motion? I don't see anybody raising their hand, so I would ask Lucy, would there be any public comment come in on this?
No, sir, no public comment.
All right, back to the commission for a vote. All those in favor of your chairman signing this letter by a vote of the commissioners, signify by saying aye. We'll go with Charlie.
Aye, Charlie.
Commissioner Hanson?
Aye.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Aye.
Commissioner Mullins?
Aye.
And I'll say aye to that. So that covers that part. I think we still need to follow up and maybe not make a motion, but tell our county administrator that there may be some follow-up work here concerning some kind of follow-up to this letter. This letter is not policy. It's a statement of it's an open letter, and that to make it viable, it would have to eventually be put into policy form. And I think even our attorney would agree with that. And so I think what we might be saying is, given all the people who have signed this, that some additional action is required to follow up on this and make sure we understand if any changes are needed to current policy. I don't know if that makes sense. Yes.
And I think Mr. Mullins, Commissioner Mullins was on the right track. I just didn't second his motion because you know what I was getting at is I don't want to abdicate any of my wouldn't vote for any abdication of my statutory responsibilities as a county commissioner. And they're very clear. The lines are delineated. The governor has his responsibilities, and all the municipalities do, and we do as well. So, but in terms of having conversation about it, and if we can learn to do things better as a group, as a county, and all of us working together, then we should always be on board to do that.
I'll read the one sentence that I am a little worried about along those lines, and it's in the 4th paragraph. It says, "It is critical that leaders at all levels support subject matter experts to allow them to make the difficult decisions necessary to lead us through the recovery process." I think you could interpret that different ways. And I think there are times when we as the elected officials need to step in and be the decision maker. And I think that that's one of the reasons you would want to form this working group and make sure that any policy that comes out is carefully looked at. And we do get agreement, interlocal on it. So I don't know if we need a motion. I'm looking around at the other commissioners here. I will sign the letter, and then I think we should go back to our county administrator to work, since all the other county and city administrators have signed this along with other mayors. I think there's some additional coordination required here to make sure we're in sync. And I don't think we really don't know what the ultimate product of this letter will be. Mr. Mullins.
No, I think definitely it would be a good idea to speak. I mean, we've talked about saving people and keeping people out of harm, but this COVID has been really unique. We do have a high-risk category of people, but now we also have a high-risk category of people that have been locked up in their homes, that are mentally challenged now, that are physically challenged because they hadn't been able to get out, that are now financially challenged. So this COVID has been a double whammy. I mean, you can't just take in consideration one group and say we're protecting them. I mean, we don't know what kind of damage we've done to the economy. We know we've damaged it, but we don't know how deep it is, and we're going to continually see that. So you've got to keep in mind there are many different areas here you've got to focus on. I was all for us being staying in and being safe, but once we started seeing the devastation to the economy and we started seeing a little bit of green light, I think we need to move back towards getting that open. And I think that's a decision that elected officials are going to have to make in conjunction with the professionals. I mean, we got professionals here, and I love our emergency services. I think our health department's done a phenomenal job. I think our hospital's done an okay job. I mean, they're taking a beating in the media with these tests right now. You know, there's not been a perfect execution of this COVID response yet. And I doubt there is, because it's such a unique thing. So I think that communicating like we're doing is very crucially important.
All right. I don't see a motion, but I would like, as chairman, to get everybody to kind of agree that we would pass this back to our county administrator to follow up with the other heads around the county and see where we go with this. And I'm sure there'll be some additional action that way. I don't know if we can make a motion, a specific motion at this point. If you'll shake your heads or say, I'll ask Charlie, do you think that's the way to go on this now?
Yes, let's go ahead.
All right.
I agree.
Commissioner, okay.
I agree.
Commissioner Mullins and Commissioner O'Brien. Okay. So, Mr. Cameron, is that clear enough for you as far as Commissioner direction? I'll sign the letter, and then you're going to pick up, since we have such notable people who have signed off on this letter.
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman. I would like to put some of Commissioner O'Brien's concern at rest. The whole purpose for a municipality is to do things differently from the overall governing body. If they did everything in lockstep with us, there would be no reason for the municipality. So we accept that, and I always respect their decisions and what they do to represent the people within their municipality. If, again, as Commissioner O'Brien said, if the intent of this letter is to maybe structure something for some narrow interlocal purpose, you know, that might be a possibility. But I certainly endorse anything that engenders cooperation. Since I have been here, we have responded to any of the three major municipalities' concerns when they had problems or needed help from the county or needed support from the county. We've got 1,000 batting average of doing that for them. So we don't intend to change that. And if there's an opportunity for even more cooperation, I am for that. But we do have to preserve the policy-making responsibilities of each of those jurisdictions.
All right, thank you. With that, that closes that item. So we've done 8B, 8C, and 8D. We go on, there are no public hearings scheduled. And we're now back to additional reports and comments. County Administrator report and comments.
Yes, sir, and I apologize in advance because this has gone on a little while. I have a number of different things. I'll start by addressing Ms. Yude's questions. With regard to the wastewater plant and water systems at Plantation Bay, we are still on track for FGUSA to come before you with a purchase agreement. That should happen in June. In the meantime, U.S. Water is on site. They have installed or in the process of installing a new well. They have updated the lime slaker. They have installed a clear water well. and they have considerably improved the quality of water out there. We were getting anywhere from 2 to 4 to 10 to 12 complaints a day. We have had, I think, one complaint that turned out not to be anything to do with our water in the last 30 days. So that's a great improvement. With regard to the Bing's Landing lawsuit, that is a litigation issue, which I am informed that the county attorney intends to address in his remarks, and he is much more suited to do that than me, since he plans to do it anyway. Update on the Old Dixie Hotel. We have given them deadlines. They have submitted a set of plans for a complete renovation of that facility. That does not alleviate them from removing the risk to the community. They have to immediately install fencing to fence that off and address the issue with the pool. And ultimately, they're going to have to address the issues with the derelict or dilapidated signs out there. That is moving forward, and we're happy that we have gotten some action, and the Sheriff's Department should be relieved of that additional efforts that he has to make due to the derelict nature of that within the next few weeks. With regard to the airport, the path forward has been suspended somewhat by the lack of face-to-face meetings. We did want to do some focus groups out there with the community. We have sent a request to the FAA to do a noise study on the airport. Have not heard back from that since we sent that out. We have reduced considerably the amount of traffic during the COVID crisis that was going on out there. But we're going to have to go back and fully address that issue just as soon as we get through with this reopening phases that we have going. And I would like to thank Ms. Yu for her vote of confidence for me, but I will tell her that we have some incredibly talented people that are addressing those issues, and the credit for the progress we are making really does go to them. Thank you very much for that, Ms. Yu. On a good news note, a couple of items. The Leadership Academy finished up this past week, and it focused on the principles and the tools of leadership. Both Dr. Saviak and myself were truly impressed with the quality of participation and the understanding of the principles as presented. We look forward to our first face-to-face or open meeting so that we can have the official graduation exercise on that. But what we saw in that meeting speaks very well for the future of Flagler County's future leadership. And on another note, the the disallowed Medicare reimbursements that range somewhere between $2 and $3 million had a real struggle getting access to the computer system that would allow us to bill those. But I'm happy to say that that happened last week, and the tax collector's office, which is doing yeoman work there, submitted our first group of claims that amounted to about $140,000. So that money is going to start coming in until we can get all of that billing taken care of. Again, tax collector is doing some really serious work for us on that. It's not a very easy thing to translate the old system over to the new system. And we have the Memorial Day coming up, of course, and we, of course, are not comfortable with having a public event with that, particularly since so much of that population is in the vulnerable years. Our creative team has done a wonderful job, and we are going to have a seriously high quality virtual event. And I'd like to call on Julie Murphy to introduce you what to expect this coming Memorial Day.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, commissioners. So as mentioned, Flagler County's creative team has been working diligently to create a digital, online and on-air Memorial Day ceremony and experience for our residents. Everyone is invited at 9 a.m. Monday the 25th to a virtual Memorial Day ceremony featuring Admiral Mark Bensel, U.S. Navy retired, as a keynote speaker, and the recounting of the historic first time in U.S. naval history that an aviator was buried in his aircraft after being killed in action. The audio of the Memorial Day ceremony can be heard on WNZF 94.9 FM, Kicks Country 98.7 FM, through live streaming at flaglerbroadcasting.com, and on the Flagler radio app. Of course, this is with our wonderful partnership that we have with David Ayers and Flagler Radio. The video will be able to be viewed at the same time, which again is 9 a.m. Monday, May 25th, on Flagler County's FCTV Spectrum Channel 492, on our YouTube page, and on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Flagler County Government. The other thing that we're doing for Memorial Day, and this would be thanks to our GIS division, which created an app for the public called Flagler County Veterans Memorial to showcase the friends and family members who lost their lives during active duty, as well as an online submission form to provide the necessary information and photos to populate that memorial. The easiest way to find the links to that are to go to our homepage, flaglercounty.org, and in the dark green box on the left-hand side, you can see the links. And we're really hoping that a lot of people will honor their fallen veterans there. It's really a great piece of history, and with all social media, anything that can be done online, it gives people an opportunity to connect. You can click on various regions of the world. Like if you had somebody die in Pearl Harbor, you can see who else was there. You might find one of your relatives' friends, learn a little bit of history. So that's what we've got going on. Any questions?
I got a short question, Julie. Is this also the time that we announce the Veteran of the Year for Flagler County? I know David called me about a procedure and stuff like that, but is it their intent to announce the Veteran of the Year also about the same time?
I think that comes later in the year. I think they do that on Veterans Day.
Okay.
Julie, so we don't have any in-person responsibilities for this event then?
No in-person responsibilities. We're keeping everybody safe at home, so you can either watch or listen on the radio, or watch on our TV station, or on social media.
And I hadn't seen anything, but do you know if the cities are doing something similar?
I know the sheriff's office for the law enforcement memorial did something similar, and that would have been, I think, May 15th.
Right.
I'm not sure what the city of Palm Coast or the city of Flagler Beach are doing.
Yeah. Julie, just Dave Sullivan again. I did do an introduction video for the event as chairman, like we do each year. So that will be part of the video.
Yes, I would just like to thank Julie for her presentation. And if at all possible, you need to see this thing. They actually have live footage, Navy footage, of a plane that came in that was completely shot up. And the gunner in the plane, after it safely landed, was so shot up, and his compartment was so shot up that rather than to try to get him out of it, They turned the plane into his burial vault and shrouded it and rolled it off the back of the carrier for burial at sea. Very, very touching, and I don't think I've seen anything like it. So it's actual live footage. So the creative team continues to amaze me with the stuff that they do. Moving on, just one quick item. I was notified by voice or through the attorney's office that Flagler Beach would like to have the Wickline Center turned over to them in total. That's been a subject of controversy for some time. I can't see any reason why we wouldn't seek some other arrangements, whether or not it's building the community center that we would use for that over here, or working something out more in the center of population over towards Palm Coast. I don't know, but that building is old, and it is at some point going to require some major work. And under the present arrangement, we would incur a lot of that liability. So when the official letter gets here, we'll put it on the agenda for action by the board. But I just wanted to give you a heads up that it's coming. And last, I just want to address something that's out there that's really critical for this community. And that is the and protecting our shoreline. Al has done a lot of work on getting easements. He's gotten most of the easements. There are going to be a few holdouts. We're going to have to address that in some fashion or form. Al is going to need some authorities, but this is critical to this community to get this done. And even one holdout is unacceptable, because if there's a breach point, that breach point will compromise everything behind the fortifications that we do to the coastline. And in case anybody that's watching this in our collective memory has faded any, I'd like to play a video to show you just what happened. And it could be far worse if we took a direct hit. So Carlos, if you'd roll that video for me, and then the county attorney will pick up after that.
So is the video's done, right?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. So now we're just going to move this to county attorney's report.
Yes,
Is
sir.
that your intention, Mr. Cameron?
That is.
Okay, thank you. Well, that was an excellent introduction, really a poignant, very dramatic introduction to the plight we face and what we need to do. I know you all know what we need to do. You saw that destruction, and that was because we did not have a fortified beach. Left it very exposed. It continues to be very exposed. It has a unique situation of being a short beach. It's not like a lengthy beach in Volusia that you might see, or up in Duval County, or even in Nassau County at Amelia Island. In other words, the ocean shores crash very close to where A1A is, and that beach will continue to erode if we do nothing. Now, we have made progress on the easements, a very daunting responsibility, 141 easements that we were to procure. We now have, as of this moment, 104 recorded. Now, there are two other categories that we are tracking them, and one category is in process, and there are 22 in process. And what that means is that they've affirmatively indicated to us and taken actions whereby they are moving toward recording the easements, but still we don't have them. Then there's another group, about 15, where we are not getting the kind of assurances that we feel give us the confidence that we know we're going to get the easement. Doesn't mean we've given up or we don't think that's possible. Now, I need to tell you that the people move back and forth between those categories. So somebody that gives us some indication that they're going to record the easement, but then we don't hear from them and the calls don't get returned, then we move them back into the category of, for lack of a better term, those that are hard to get. And right now that categorization is about 15 different properties. So I'm sure you can see that the absolute smart thing to do for the long term for anybody living in Flagler Beach, any Flagler County resident, is to renourish those dunes to provide some additional armament so as to avoid what you just saw in the video. Is it a guarantee that we'll never have a storm that'll wreak as much damage? No. But by having this armament that is being paid for by the federal and state government, it'll obviously provide us very substantial bulwark against a storm and blunt the impact of the storm. So why are we having trouble and what can we do about it? Frankly, we have run into all kinds of questions, and that's okay. We want people to be educated. But some of the views of some of those that are harder to get are really not understandable. So for example, one comment would be, well, I don't need to sign on because my neighbors will sign on and their sand will fill in front of mine. Okay, so I'm thinking, and I don't want to offend anybody, I mean them, I'm not meaning you, but so you want to hope that the sand from your adjoining neighbors will eventually fill in and protect your property rather than have the certainty that when the construction occurs, it will be filled? It makes no sense. There are some who do not understand that by leaving their property out, that it creates a breach point, as Mr. Cameron has accurately described it. The waves, anyone who understands anything about waves, those waves will go to the weakest point and they will pound on that weakest point, and that will be where the most damage is done, and that's going to be their properties. The part that I don't understand is how some of them can sacrifice the safety of their neighbors, whether it be their adjoining neighbors who've decided to participate or are nearby, or who are west of them. They are putting them at real risk. Given the fact that what they own is really quite little, and I will demonstrate that in a way that is very dramatic shortly, and that this is at no cost to them. It is not understandable. I can't comprehend why somebody wouldn't instantly sign if they apprised themselves of all the facts. And not only that, not only is the work being done for free, the equivalent value for each 50 front feet is $183,000. So if you own 50 front feet, we're going to give you $183,000 worth of property you did not have, and that you will not have unless you sign on to the program. So some say, well, this is all of a sudden. Why are we doing this all of a sudden? And this is an expression of a little bit of distrust of the government. And what I've tried to explain, and I don't know the explanation goes far enough. I don't know who harbors that thought unless they actually express it to me or to someone else on the project team, and then it comes to me and I explain it. You know, the only reason, oh, I don't want to say the only reason, that's an overstatement, but one of the principal reasons why we have the project today is because we were on national news after Matthew. You turned on any major media outlet and there we were, all of that destruction. Because for what, a decade? And I don't even know how far back to date it. Faith Al-Khatib is probably the one, at least from the county side, to best know that. The people at City of Flagler Beach know that. They've been working on this for at least a decade, if not more, to get funds. Well, why didn't we ever get money? Well, because we're just a tiny little burg. We don't have the influence to move dollars on renourishment like a Dade County, a Broward County, a Palm Beach County, a Duval County. And I'm not trying to denigrate those communities. They just have way more lobbying clout. They have way more value, dollar value on their beaches than we do. So because we got the national attention, it made everybody sit up and notice. And then there was something else that happened. Very important ingredient. So this is in one sense serendipity that we made the national news. So people started to say, wait a minute, this community needs help. But the other thing was that we were very vigorous in arguing for these monies. I know I can think right now off the top of my head, and I know I'm not going to think of everything, but I recall Commissioner Sullivan and Commissioner Hanson making the trek to Washington, D.C. and pleading our case for relief. I can recall a large group of business people who gathered and hosted Senator Jack Latvala, who at the time was the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, how the mosquito control district gave him a helicopter flight up and down our beach so he could dramatically see the impact and the absolute necessity for the funds. I can remember when Governor Scott expedited the FDOT contracting for the rebuilding. I can remember you commissioners, and I'm sure others, that talked with our legislative delegation and brought this issue to the fore and got money, some money for us, not all the money we needed. Well, because of that constant press and because we were communicating that we were ready, that we wanted to do this project, we got the attention of the Army Corps. And so they decided to fund us in a big way. And of course, FDOT has been our partner. You know all about that. I'm not going to go over that story. You all know about the sand. There's 3 million cubic yards of sand that is being contributed from offshore by the United States of America to help this beach. That sand is of the highest quality. It has no organics in it. That is a very rare find for offshore sand. They have just found this very large area that's been collecting coquina and other sands that are perfectly compatible with this beach, that will bleach much lighter colored and be much more accepting by our public, and they'll be able to get those coquina hues back into their beach. Plus, it's going to extend the beach out. The beach is going to be extended out in a way that the beach looked 20 to 30 years ago, offering a greater runway for those waves to come up and dissipate their energy before they hit something and damage something. So this is like a no-brainer. So there's no plot here. We're just trying to protect what we have so that we avoid these kinds of catastrophic losses. Most of you know that we didn't understand why some people weren't reacting. And let me see, we went 12 blocks from about 15th down to 28th. You've got a photo, Carlos, can you put that photo up? The city police chief, well, no, not that photo. That's the photo of the moon. I'm talking about the photo of their witnessing the easement. Do you have that? I'd sent that earlier. No?
No, not that one.
No, one before that.
Yeah, I was looking for it and I didn't see it.
Okay. But in any event, I think you all know that we actually went on a full morning and into 1 o'clock in the afternoon, traveling from 15th down to 28th, stopping at every residence or business that had not signed an easement. Now that effort was very productive. We learned a lot of things that people, misunderstood, or questions they didn't ask. There were some people that said, gee, they didn't know anything about the project. And that's kind of pretty hard to believe, but hey, we're going to give our citizens the benefit of the doubt. So we were able to generate easements from there, but we're still not able to completely bring them all in as of this time. Suzanne Johnston accompanied us. One of her assistants, Renee Flint, who's a notary, came so that we could get easements signed right there on the spot. And that was the photo that we were going to show you, them witnessing an easement, all socially distanced and masked up. So you can forget that photo. We'll send it to them. We'll send it to them later. But in any event, and the police chief went with us. So that was a very successful venture. We learned a lot of things. We're answering questions that really had not surfaced. Like, for instance, the two that I just asked, or the two that I just presented. Now, I do want you to show Carlos that beach scene, that photograph of the beach. You know what I'm talking about? There you go. Now, commissioners, I want you to look at that. I took that photo. This was on our walk. And a lot of the people that own these beach remnants really do not know what they own. Okay, you can see A1A. And you can see the little, the sod next to it, and you can see the sand. Well, some people think, some of these owners think that, see where those signs are, line up? They think that begins their property ownership. In other words, that they own some of this green material here. Nope. That belongs to the, within the right-of-way of DOT. Now, I want you to look east, that is toward the ocean. Look at the rocks. You see the rocks strewn along the beach? You see it going, as far as your eye can take you, right? Some of them think they own that. Nope, they don't own that. That is DOT right-of-way. The reason why those rocks are there is because DOT got a permit from the Department of Environmental Protection to install those rocks on their land, So do you know what they own? They own the land that's east of those rocks. Do you see much dune material there? Do you see much vegetation there as to what they own? And what I'm trying to tell you is virtually they have a piece of paper where they own, but they have no physical attributes or improvement other than it's the floor of the beach. And many do not understand this. So this was something that I discovered. I mean, maybe I should have anticipated that they wouldn't know where their property lines are, but now we're going to be producing, with the help of the county engineer, aerials, close-up aerials that will show the property lines so they'll realize exactly what it is they own and what it is they do not own. So one of the things that we need to do, we need to bring this home. We need to finish this work, because every day that we delay getting these easements puts off the first day of construction. Now, right now, if we could nail all of these easements by the end of the month, it will not delay what our initial plans were as far as the initial construction. We'll be able to get right where we were. If we continue to push delay, though, it has the risk, and by pushing delay, I mean by not getting all the easements, okay? By having holdouts. And the holdouts, you know, they're going to be holes. There will not be permitted, the Army Corps, nor the contractor, nor anybody will be permitted to put sand unless there's been a written documented permission to do so. So there'll be holes, potential breach points. So the Army Corps doesn't want breach points because that weakens their overall investment. So the more we delay this, then it pushes when we can go out to bid. Because when our easement work is done, then they finalize the drawings. If there are any holdouts, they'll draw the holes and then it will go out to bid. We don't want any holes. So we want to keep going until we get them all in. I think what the administrator and I both need, if the board is inclined, is that we need to have you grant us whatever authority we need in the interim. You know, the next time we meet is not for 2 weeks, right? Is that right? Or maybe even a little longer. So we need to make sure that we can act between meetings. And so we want the broadest authorization that you can give us to complete this portion of the project. You can be assured that we are enlisting lots of people to help. You can be assured that whatever actions we take in that regard, that authority you give us, we certainly will report it back to you just as we do in any emergency. And we do consider this to be an emergency. Just so you know, on your agendas, right? You all remember on your agendas are the emergency orders that continue Hurricane Matthew emergency because of this dune restoration project and because of the incredible vulnerability of our community. So I know that was rather long stated, but I thought I wanted to fill you in on just the progress we have made, the progress we haven't made, the urgency of doing this, and for you to grant us the authority. And I don't know what it is that we would need to do or want to do, but if we can't get to you as a board to do it, we want to be able to do it and report it to you. And of course, you can, you know, review it at the appropriate time. So that ends.
Right. Al, are you going to talk about Captain's Barbecue also?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Just want to make sure. So what I'm trying to think, what kind of additional support do you need from the commissioners? I'm not really sure, other than ask us to do something, we'll go do it. I think you've got the authority to continue to try to get the easements.
Right. We certainly do have that authority, but we can't conceive of all the scenarios that we might have to address in order to move forward. We may need to do some things with our partner agencies, for example. We may need to address property owners in a particular way through the city perhaps, or some other fashion. We just want to make sure that we have that leeway. Remember, we can't ask your permission, specific permission to do something except at a meeting, except at a notice meeting. Right. So this just gives us a runway, if you will. Now, we're obviously going to be very accountable for it. We're obviously going to be very measured. You've heard the analysis. You know it's going to be consistent with the analysis so as to avoid any holes, any breach points in what we're building.
Do any of the other commissioners have any thoughts about of what we could do to support Al, title company, and so forth, getting these easements done? I don't know. Any thoughts on that? Great.
Well, I think
Well,
we've used some, I think we've used some of the commissioners to go out and meet with these people, and that's been successful. And I think we ought to get out just like we did for vacation rentals up in Tallahassee. You know, I'm impressed with what Al had to say. I've been impressed with Al the 8 years I've been here in this county. Al's one of the best attorneys I know. If I ever got in trouble, I'd call Al. And I don't mean to change the the thought here. I also think Al ought to run for the next president of the United States after that speech. He did one hell of a job. And that guy's got my support. I'll do anything to support his particular needs.
Ray Hansen.
Well, I think the nuclear option, I think we need to, if somebody refuses, we need to take the land. We need to eminent domain the part that's west of or east of A1A of their land. Take it and be damned with them. I mean, I think we cannot have gaps in this wall that we're going to build.
Any of the other commissioners have any thoughts on this? I don't see anybody else raising their hand. So Al, we're with you. Just tell me, give me if there's some kind of motion or agreement. I think we're all strongly supporting the effort. If you get, give us action, task us, we'll go do something for you. I don't know what else to say.
Well, I did. I mean, what we're trying to do is get the list down to those that are the hardest to get. In other words, exhaust our education and persuasion efforts, right? Nail down what those exact numbers, who they are, and then look at those and then come up with a new approach. Now, there might be some people, there's a variety of people. There might be some, because see, we're getting to learn who they are.
Right.
Right? I mean, we're interfacing. Their lack of response educates you, right? Their response educates you about them. How they express themselves educates you about them. The questions they ask educate us about them. So I definitely will possibly pair you with someone to talk to. So that could be something. Now I don't need board approval to do that. That's not what I mean.
Right.
I know that I have more support from the city of Flagler Beach. The police chief, Matt Downey, is really coming in full bore to help us out here. Well, and Mr. Sullivan yourself, you were able to get what I consider to be a keystone property, the Topaz, and if you all recall my reports, that caused a number of people to decide, you know what, if they did it, they're pretty smart people, they're business people. I'm going to sign too. So that was like, for them, the good housekeeping seal of approval. So we were able to generate. Now we only have 2 commercial businesses left. 2 left. Everyone else is signed on. Everyone else. Restaurants, motels, B&Bs, you name it. So we expect one of those 2 that we're going to be able to resolve their issues and get them. And then we've got the last one. So we think we've got an argument that you're the last one. You're the only business that hasn't signed. Okay? So that's how we deal with that person. Now, as far as, for instance, Mr. Hansen has suggested a legal remedy. Well, it may be an intergovernmental remedy in addition, where we need to do something with our interagency partners to help move the ball and get the thing done. There's a lot of different things that theoretically would be on the table. We don't know what we're going to want to deploy, but if we do decide something, say it involves our doing some sort of agreement with the Army Corps or the FDOT to get around the particular problem, do I want to wait until the next meeting? That's really what it is. If you'd rather us wait, we'll follow what you say. Yeah.
I think what the chairman is asking for is you to give him some sort of motion that they could pass, which would go something like this, to instruct the county administrator and the county attorney to take such measures as permitted within the law to assure that this public safety objective is accomplished expediently.
That's what I would
And,
recommend.
Okay. As chairman, could I get one of our other commissioners to make that a motion, what Jerry just said?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I move the exact
Mr. Chair.
wording that the county administrator used. I move that we approve that.
Do I have a second?
Second from Charlie.
Second from Charlie. Further comments by the commissioners on the motion that we've got on the table. And I'll check with Lucy if she's still there to see if there's any public comments have come in during this discussion.
Question?
No public comments have come in during the discussion.
All right, so we're back to the board for any further comments. If not, I'm going to bring it forward for a vote. Mr.
Question.
Erickson on the motion. Okay.
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
Go ahead. Donnie O'Brien,
Yeah,
go ahead.
I guess I don't understand the purpose of the motion. This is something that's already being done. They're doing what they're taking care of their responsibilities within policy and the law. So why do we need to restate something that's already happened? I don't get it.
It's a good point.
It's a good point. I agree. It's a good point. I don't think it hurts to
Reinforce.
yeah.
I can answer that. It's a comfort blanket when you have to take actions that may be considered public policy, to know that the policymakers support what you're doing.
Well, I support you. Okay.
All right. I'm going to bring it back for a vote. Vote on the motion that's on the floor concerning, as stated by our county administrator. Mr. Erickson, yea or nay?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Hanson?
Aye.
Mr. Mullins? Mr. Mullins?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
And Mr. Sutton, I will vote aye. That approves that motion concerning the dune restoration project. And we do support Al and everything you're doing on this, and let us know how we can help. With that, did you want to, is that enough on that, Al, and did you want to go on to the captain's barbecue situation?
No, that's enough. And again, when I summarized everybody that helped get us to where we are, I couldn't name everybody. There's so many people that are on board. This is truly a community enterprise, strongly supported. So if I didn't mention somebody's name or some kind of effort that got us to this point, that was not intentional. It's just there's not enough time to do that. And I was just trying to do highlights to provide a range of the kinds of things that to move this forward. Okay, now so now I'm going to go to Captain's Barbecue. You know that at the last meeting I reported to you that we were in mediation. We were very close to concluding. We had reached a point now where we were getting pen to paper and working on it. And we did have a mediation with many subsequent mediating conversations since then to get us to this point. I want to let you know where we are, the direction we're at. The final words are not yet done. They will be, in due course. We want to get an affirmation or maybe input on the direction that the administrator has taken us relative to the mediation. So with that, let me begin my my presentation. Fortunately, I don't have any videos to to accompany it. So you, or other graphic images. Okay, okay, let's now focus on what it is we're trying to do. The big question is, how are we going to implement the lease arrangement that we presently have? In whatever form you may think the lease is, there is an existing lease. How are we going to implement that relationship in the future? And obviously that is what's being litigated. And just to give you, just a real quick recap of that, you know that we've been under lease with Captain's Barbecue since 2011. We've done amendments in November 2018 after there was a common belief that the existing facility could not handle its continued use for any extended period of time. A new lease was done for a new site. Then that was brought back and reconsidered and reopened by the board. And then from that point, there were discussions about trying to reach a resolution. And ultimately, those did not result in a successor lease, a finalized successor lease that the parties agreed to. So there's litigation. And they're litigating. I'm not trying to, in order to talk about a mediation, you have to start with, well, kind of what are the claims and what are being mediated? So their belief, their legal belief, is they had a valid binding lease for November 2018, that it entitled them to build on a new site, that it was very, very specific, required very significant expenditures on their part, and in reliance on being told that this was the direction that the county was going to go in. They spent the money on engineering, on architects, design people to implement that authorization. There was an expectation on their part that during the interim time that there would be repairs done to the existing facility, and that the cancellation, the suspension of the November 2018 lease caused them great damage. It literally eliminated any lease term beyond the time that they had anticipated that they had under our present lease that's in existence. So they believe they were substantially harmed. So they asked for injunctive relief, which means an order from a court that instructs Flagler County to permit them to build on the new site. They also requested the court for damages for all the lost revenue that they had and would have in the future because of the disruption of their leasing relationship, their commercial relationship with the county, which had existed continuously since 2011. The only I want to mention this because I've seen this every now and then in the blogs, not recent ones. They violated their lease. And that had to do with the tables. And I do want to put this to rest. I don't know if you hear that and so forth and so on. But you may recall that when that came to the attention, formally came to our attention because of state inspections, that the county administrator issued a notice of violation to them and had them immediately correct it within the 30 days. That's what our lease provides, and they corrected it. So they were not in violation of the lease from the standpoint that would be recognized by a court of law, because they had corrected. I want to make sure that that is in your mind, that's a red herring issue, should people discuss that. So in any event, there we were, and what we're trying to do is define that relationship going forward. Okay, so what are we doing? We're going to continue with the primary theme that whatever happens out there has got to be consistent with the very unique status of that property. Just to tick it off very quickly, it's on the National Scenic Byway. It's part of the National Estuarine Research Reserve. It has a National Register historic site on the property. that has been honored with an international award and many state awards. It has amazing recreational opportunities on the site that our public has enjoyed. There has been a very substantial expenditure of public funds, very substantial expenditure of volunteer hours to make that a very significant showcase property. It also has Captain's Barbecue, and Captain's Barbecue has been enjoyed by our public for the years that it's been in operation as compared to previous years. Remember, we've owned this property since 1990, and we have not had any kind of business that's been able to operate there successfully since 2011. So how do we have all of that coexist in a way that protects the value of that land, of the legacy of that land for our public, and which honors the commercial relationship that is lawfully established between Captain's Barbecue and Flagler County. So all those things have to be balanced out. And based on the direction of the board, our starting point is we're not building a new building. That building that's there is going to stay there. We'll fix it up so that it lasts the duration of the tenancy. It's our building, and it was built roughly in the 1950s. Now it's been expanded upon, but we know it's got problems. So in order for us to be a responsible landlord, we have to bring it up to some suitable operation capability. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something with the bathrooms. We've agreed that we'll relocate and modify them as is mutually agreed by the parties as the owner of that building. We place those bathrooms there when we modernize that structure in approximately, I'm going to say in the mid-90s. We're going to allow them to install propane gas tanks on their property. That's a very sound way to bring that kind of fuel energy into that restaurant. We're going to enclose the exterior patio area. We're going to install removable windows. So this benefits the longevity of this building in the county's interest, but also in the interest of the tenant, Captain's Barbecue. We're going to be doing those repairs as much as possible in non-business hours, when they're not serving the public. There has been a lot of interaction between our folks, the folks that Mr. Cameron relies on in general services as to how to carry out that work, and interfacing with the Captain's Barbecue owners and operators as to how that work can be conducted so that it doesn't disrupt their customer flow. Now, there's going to be some work that's going to require that the building not be open to the public. And they have figured out that's going to be a 2-week period. Captains will provide that 2-week period for the county to do that work, and it will not make a claim for the lost profits that would come from their business closure for that 2-week period. Also, because they were out of pocket based on then county administration advising them that they were going to be able to have a new site, and that was the preference, the county is going to reimburse them for their design and architectural design costs for the new site, which they never got to implement, up to a maximum of $50,000. And that would be through verified invoices paid for architects, engineers, if they did any testing of the site or anything that was connected to the design of a new alternative facility. We're going to separately meter their utility use so that we do have that separation between us and the county park. They're going to agree in doing so that the November 2018 lease is completely void, null and void. So there won't be any rights that remain under that can be argued. The lease is going to have the same renewal terms that were in the November 18 lease, but obviously it's going to be on the current site. As we repair it and modify it, but not as it would have existed in the new site. We are going to allow them to book special events at our pavilion where they can cater those events. They'll book just like any other entity would book through our Parks and Recreation Department. We'll give them a lot of leeway to do that. Of course, if they're not using it, it remains available for other people to book. So we're trying to do that to give them a greater opportunity to expand their ability to serve Flagler County residents and make up for revenue impairments that result from the fact that we didn't allow them to build a much larger, more expanded restaurant. We're going to be maintaining all of the interior and exterior structural elements. The first $2,000 of cost for any of those repairs is going to be the expense of Captain's Barbecue. The cost above $2,000, we will assume that cost. So that accounts for the fact that the building is older and that there may need to be substantial improvements that may need to be undertaken. And that was the dividing line between the county and the tenant's responsibility. They'll be able to renew. We heard a lot of commentary about the subsidized lease rate. And so what Mr. Cameron has done, he has, index is not the right word, he has built-in increases that take it much closer to what people would consider to be a market rate over the duration of the lease. Okay, so let's say there's a catastrophic loss. Something could happen. Could be a hurricane. What happens then? What if the building is a total loss? If the building has been, if the value of the building is damaged more than 50%, the parties can, the county can elect not to repair or rebuild the existing building. If we exercise that option, captains can, at its own option, build on that same site, the successor restaurant. Finally, well, not finally, but the next thing is that we've agreed that whatever state laws and licensing requirements exist relative to alcohol, and of course that also goes with the sanitary sewer that's related to that in terms of service, the kind of service that's provided there, that's going to be governed by those state rules. And then of course, with all of this being agreed to, the lawsuit will be dismissed with prejudice. So that's the direction. I think you can see from the summary that we've addressed the major issues. They were addressed through very protracted discussions to reach this give and take between the parties. This is where the administrator has taken us. I recommend this approach as a appropriate means of resolving the litigation. If we were to litigate, this would go for jury trial. Jury trials are very time intensive. It takes much longer to prepare for and to try a jury trial case. And the expense would be very considerable. This would not be a 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. I doubt it would even be a 1 week. It would be more than a 1 week trial because the evidence is so very substantial and the history of this is so very substantial, and the technical evidence that would need to come in concerning the engineering status of the building, what are the elements that need to be repaired, what should the allocation of responsibility to be. That'd be very extensive, and this would be if the parties can come to a meeting of the minds where they're both happy. Maybe they're both not completely happy. Remember, people don't walk away from a mediation 100% happy. You want to be in that 80% happy range where everybody is able to see some benefit from the mediation that outweighs the tremendous expense and uncertainty of litigation. So we're asking for the board's concurrence with this direction. If we've missed something, this is your opportunity to provide that feedback. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cameron because he was very involved in these discussions to fill in maybe some things that I didn't get a chance to fill in my presentation. This obviously is a very, very important issue to have resolved. The lawsuit was filed in June 2019. So, you know, we're almost a year into the litigation. So I'll take questions, but what I want to do first is turn it over to Mr. Cameron to fill in anything that maybe needs filling in for what I've told you.
All right.
No, I think you got it covered out, with the exception of, I just want to reiterate that this is a negotiated settlement coming out of mediation, and it is certainly something that is the best that the county attorney and I could get from the captain's group to avert a lawsuit. And the decision for the board is whether you want to accept this or that you want to move forward with the litigation.
Oh, okay, Al, is there anything else you want to hit on?
No, sir. I'll
Al?
answer any questions. Can
Yeah.
you hear me?
So
I'll answer
any
questions.
questions now on the captain's barbecue?
Yes, sir, we can hear
Right.
you.
Anything on the, what? Charlie, did you say something? Can you hear
I
me?
just said, just keep going. I got a signal, said my
Can
internet
people hear me
connection
right now?
is wobbling. I can hear you.
Yeah, I think so. All right. Okay. All right, fine. We'll go, Al, I think we'll go on. I don't see anybody raising their hand or wanting to say anything at this point. Thank you very much. I know it's those two jobs, the beach restoration, dune restoration, and captains are just really, really tough to get done. So thank you for getting close to the end on captains. With that, we do have another community outreach period. Lucy, are you still hanging in there with us? You mean?
I am, and I do have some community
Chair, can
outreach for
I-
you.
Okay. Okay, this is our item 10C, community outreach. We have the same rules. So Lucy, if you've got a couple of things to relate to us, please go ahead.
I do. Before I do, though, I think Al was trying to get your attention for a motion.
Well,
Can you hear me?
I thought we already did one motion. Go ahead, Al.
No, I wasn't necessarily looking. Can you all hear me? Is the audio
Yes,
working?
I
Okay,
can
good.
hear.
Thank you. Thank you. Wasn't looking for a motion to approve. We just need to know, Mr. Cameron and I, because we're like your representatives here on this thing. And now
Right.
we're going to really seriously put pen to paper. We want to make sure that the direction that we've outlined, are you comfortable with it? Are you ready to see, not asking you to vote now because you haven't seen the words, but are you ready to see a document that tracks the things that I've talked about? I saw Mr. Hansen's hand go up, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Hanson, go ahead.
Yeah,
Mr. Harris.
Al,
Go ahead.
I commend you. I
Go
think
ahead.
that's yeoman's work, and I give you full support for what you're doing.
Mr. Erickson.
And I echo that. That's
Yeah.
I echo that same thing. Keep it going.
All right.
I'm getting all kinds of,
I guess Mr. O'Brien or Mr. Mullins
getting
has
all
any
kinds of
comments.
screen things here.
Yeah, I know. We gotta keep moving here. Al, I think we support you on this. And you know what's gonna happen as we get closer to the final decision. There'll be some squabbling from the local people out there, but that's okay. We'll get through that. All right. Having said that,
Thank you, sir.
Lucy, back to you if you're there to any additional public comment. We're losing your
I am.
video.
I
Al,
have
just so
3
you know.
additional comments.
Looks like you
The
went to
first one is
sleep.
from
Okay. Go
All
ahead.
right. The first comment is from Gina Weiss. She says, noise abatement agenda. It has been horrific, especially today with flight school planes, 2 per minute flying low and loud over this community's heads since 7:30 a.m. How are they staying safe by 2 people getting in a plane the size of a small closet? Where is social distancing? This has been going on through the pandemic, and all of you are talking about social distancing on here. So why aren't you addressing this situation? The next comment comes from Myra Arbelay, and she just said, is there any word on the gym's opening? And then the last comment is from Steve Harrison, and I apologize, his email got stuck in spam earlier. It has to do with short-term vacation rentals. He's an independent vacation rental management, part of a vacation rental management company. He is echoing a lot of the things you heard earlier, that due to the economic impact, they're really hoping to get open before Memorial Day weekend, and he is just imploring for your help. And that is all I have for public comment.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to Jim's opening, the gym's open today with some restrictions.
Mr. Chairman.
Chair Sullivan, I think your microphone is muted.
The chair is muted.
I was trying to. Yes, Mr. Hanson, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to
Can you
get
hear
your
me?
attention. You seemed to have dropped off the line.
Yeah,
Yes.
no, I have to go to mute because there's some funny noise coming in on it when I'm not muted. Go ahead, Greg.
No, I was just trying to get your attention.
Did you want
Dave.
something to say?
People were trying to get your attention now.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm fine.
Right. Well, the reason is, it's a long story. Okay. We are now back to commission reports, comments, and actions. So one more shot for everybody. Charlie, your comments or action items, please. Can you hear me?
I have nothing, but I keep getting these error messages. Network bandwidth is low and stuff like that. So I think we're about ready to crash here.
Yeah, we're getting close. It just
unstable.
I'm
getting
right, but okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get through this before we lose the whole thing. And Greg, any comments or actions? Yeah. Okay. All right, Charlie.
I have nothing, Mr.
Greg.
Mr. Chairman, I have nothing.
The connection's getting worse. Who is that? Greg. Okay. Commissioner Mullins. Additional comments.
Just want to say, want to just thank the county for being such a model county. The people are cooperating. Thank the cities that they've worked in conjunction. Like I said, I think we've done a good job working through this with so many different variables, especially with the media and the local blogger just kind of creating havoc out there. The more boring they get, or the weaker their stories are, the more crazier they're going to go, and they don't care about the expense of hurting this community and these businesses. The fear that they're putting, the confusion that they're putting. We need to be focused on how well this county's doing. We've had 18 hospitalized, 4 deaths. That's pretty good since day one. I hate that we have any deaths, but I think that's pretty good, and the community needs to be thanked, and we need to shift the focus to opening up. That's why I keep saying over and over, we need, be glad when we get media here that really looks at reporting news. Business stimulants, there's a lot of it coming around. There's stuff going on the west side for the farmers. So there's some stimulant for agriculture that we can get. Also, there's radio and WNZF, and then also the Palm Coast Observer's doing some business stimulant and doing some programs to help promote the businesses back up. I think we need to get the county open, the parks, the trails, everything. I mean, Disney World's going to be opening here soon. They're talking about that. So we need to get open. These businesses are crucial. This other stuff's crucial. I'm not a big fan of government outreach, and I think we've experienced some of that here. But, in the beginning, we believe we needed to, but I think it's time to roll it back in and get straight. The One Blood is also working on when they take the blood of somebody that, I just found this out today, when they take the blood of somebody that has had COVID, there's finding antibodies. So they're working on that. The governor had mentioned it. They contacted me and talked to today. Also went by and saw some of the gyms. One of the gyms is doing excellent social distancing. They're open. It's M Fitness. They're doing a great job, and glad to see them. About 50 employees opened up. But let's see. And then I want to say 2 other things, and then I'm wrapped up and done. But one is there's Mahogany. We're getting ready to do that long-awaited road work out there. Staff did a phenomenal job. Faith and the crew did a phenomenal job getting this funded 100% from grants and funding and not going up on the taxes. So we as commissioners can be very proud. We fought hard out there. A lot of work's being done. They are putting a walking trail on the side as well. When I was out there talking to a group, they talked about Mosquito District, and I think I'd like to just bring a motion or bring an action that we get the county manager to look into bypass with mosquito treatment, with spray treatment. We're doing parts of the county, but not that. And we've talked to mosquito control, and they've kind of given every reason why they can't. But these citizens out there are getting eaten alive by it, and they deserve the same. So I would like to get a consensus from the board and maybe see if we can, as a group, get the county manager to look into that, because if they can't, then we need to do the mosquito control ourselves. But Mr. Cameron, do you have any input on that and comments on that?
Other than it would be very good to have the district cover the entire county. That's what they eventually did in St. John's. I know that some areas of the county don't produce as much revenue, but we don't have the luxury here of picking and choosing what areas that we want to provide service for. So it would be in the best interest of the county and eliminate a lot of confusion if we put the entire county in the district.
So what I'd like to do, Chairman, is maybe get a consensus about the mosquito, having him look into it. If the other commissioners are okay with it, having him look into it and give us some information back on how we could get that included.
Yeah, I'd like, this is Dave Sullivan. I understand the point. It's not an easy question as you think. This is the Eastern Flagler County Mosquito Control District. There's money involved in what they can and can't do, and they're a separate organization. I agree it'd be nice to have it all over, but it's going to cost more money, and I don't think it's as simple
we're paying for
a solution. What?
We're paying for it now. I mean,
actually, that's not. It's a separate money line. The mosquito control. We need, Jerry. I would just suggest we look into it and find out, get the correct details. I'm not willing to do any changing on the mosquito control district at this point.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
just
Everybody
one
else
thing
can
I'd like
talk
to-
about it.
One thing I'd like to say and finalize is that they deserve the same services that the East Side serves. And if we've got to look at increasing the money, we need to do that. But there's nobody in the Hammock, there's nobody in Palm Coast, there's nobody in Flagler Beach that is any more important than those out there. And they need this service, and they have been crying for it for many years. So we as commissioners need to be able to provide service.
It's a separate budget line, and we'll look into it.
And then the final thing I want to say is our state representative was supposed to have a child today. So I haven't got feedback on that yet, but I believe Paul Renner, Representative Renner, is a new father as of today.
Well, good for him.
And that's all I got.
All right, Donnie O'Brien.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I have nothing except I just saw a note on TV that said the president is taking hydrochloroquine right now. Kind of interesting point. Anyway, I'm done. If I can get a motion to adjourn, I'll take it.
I move we adjourn.
Second. Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks for you hanging in there. Long meeting, but we got a lot accomplished.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thank you all. Good night.